able to de-weenie him by the end of the
Good work.
So Friday he watched somebody else play him. Saturday he got to inhabit him.
Yeah. It's like it was the weenie version of Banny. That's what I was saying.
So where did it conclude then? So you got that information? It's like
we didn't get to showdown.
Right.
We were really close. By that time, they have packed the entire room around us, and they were like, "Okay, I'm not going to get a good night's sleep anyway, guys. So just clean up when you can."
They were kicking us out.
They were kicking us out.
Yeah.
And
it was 12:30.
And we just got a recap at the end, and it was we were closing in on his place. We were going to get to him very quickly, but
then it would be like something.
It was so weird because I had a moment where my friend who was there with the girlfriend who played Blanca, he was playing Wolfgang, and he's like, "What sense does this make that this person comes?" They are inciting this kind of rising up and revolution, but they're using the language that would affect them or hurt them. And it's like inciting violence or inciting people doesn't mean that you're trying to initiate them into your dogma. No, you're just riling up against the powers that be. Why don't you get that? And I realized, that's why we have such a disconnect in politics.
Well, and there was clearly a misunderstanding of motives, and he almost derailed us, trying to pull us off and say, well, this doesn't make any sense. He's talking pro and anti-magic at the same time. What's going on here? And we would have dropped into one of these, hour-long debates.
Yeah, weird debate. And it's like, no, they're inciting violence. They don't care about the dogma that they support or that they have. They're just trying to incite violence here. And I mean, when Keith kind of explained the ramp and the escalation that could happen over multiple days of allowing this to happen up until the time of the festival, it's like, oh my gosh, this could be really, really bad. And you could have, gunfights and all sorts of craziness erupting from basically them rising up to unseat the current government, or having a big old riot on their hands. And that's something Echelon just wanted to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
It's worth a few coins to stir discontent.
It probably didn't cost them much.
No, not at all.
They had to fund one pirate radio show.
Right. Yeah. Here's some transmitters and some decoys.
Yeah.
Have fun.
And they sent one agent in to kind of monitor things, right?
Yep.
The Norman.
Yeah, and he paid a photographer and a couple thugs. Right. That's pocket change.
Yep.
And the zealots came from the radio program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was really well crafted, really well laid out. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And
I think that's Ryan's favorite adventure so far.
No kidding. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was the first one that really showed what Burgundia can be.
Yeah, exactly.
Back at third level.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was right out of graduation. That was the first adventure.
Yeah.
After Noctrichter training. I mean, I'm looking here at this I've got a spreadsheet of the stuff that's coming out in the next while. Noctrichter, of course, the B1 module. Phantom Radio is B2. But I was trying to put an order to it. Like Fangs Over Cardington is getting enough playtime. I feel like that's the third one to come out. I've already got what's his name, Keenan. He played in our Friday night group. He's asked for that one. I'm like, I didn't plan on getting that one done as soon, but it's so close.
Yeah.
He's starting a group, I think, late October, early November, and I want to try to get that one ready for him. But I'm trying to do that one at the same time I'm doing the Noctrichter training, and it's stealing momentum.
Yeah.
But
you just need to clone yourself, Keith. It's okay.
But I need to get rid of this day job.
Yeah, that would do it too.
And then I've got this one, Shadow of the Wolf, that new Chattel.
Oh yeah.
That one that's going to be hard to write up because
It was branching. It was varied. It had a lot of nuance to it.
yeah.
Am I familiar with that one?
No, it was
Me either.
That was
that
the one
was
with the
Bjorn.
corrupt cardinal being. The cardinal was actually a doppelganger.
Oh,
But
right.
he was
Yeah.
being manipulated by
Epic.
a high level bard who could mask
Oh.
it so
God.
that the doppelganger couldn't read his thoughts. And so the cardinal doppelganger was being leveraged by a puppet master. And that was kind of the setup for it. But then
The environment was so rough because the doppelganger was also vying against the Calderari in the area. And that's really where the initial friction was happening. That was the visible friction was happening because stuff was, somebody sighted a werewolf
Mhm.
and, somebody got bit and it was trying to figure out exactly what was happening or whatever else. And so we were trying to figure it out at that level. And that's when we kind of stepped into this. Why is the Monsignor or whatever, the Cardinal doing what he's doing? And then we found out there's much more to that story. And then we saw the attachments associated with that story. And it was like really a nested loop of a bunch of different things going
that
on.
was as convoluted, if not more so, than the Phantom Radio one. There's a lot
Well,
on there.
yeah, I was just thinking about how you would write that, and you would write it as a sandbox, just like you did Phantom Radio, but then you would have trigger moments where when the players discover this happens,
Yeah.
and this changes the scenario.
Well, and to me, there were a lot of big moments in that adventure, but the most salient moment was
the
the
ferry.
post office.
Yeah.
They had basically debunked the Cardinal. They'd torn down all of the infrastructure of corruption, but the puppet master ultimately was like
He was in the wind.
He knew his connections had been blown up. He wasn't going to be able to do what he did, and he was leaving town. And the PCs had a very finite window to capture him, and they'd figured out that he had an address up on the benches of the town overlooking the lake. They stormed it thinking he was there, but it was rental apartments, and they ended up interrogating some of the renters. They're like, "Oh, well, we pay rent to such and such, Aaron Paul."
Yeah, Aaron Paul, and this is the post office box that we send the mail to.
And so they realized at that point they had one last chance to catch him before he was gone in the wind. So they went to stake out the post office box, realizing that he was going to come by and pick up rent checks and whatever else he needed before he left town. And they had the advantage, right? They were like poised to capture this guy. But 2 die rolls changed the entire counter. Right? So Blanca was sitting inside while everybody was waiting outside. She was going to use a wizard mark on the postal thing so that she could track whoever came, because they didn't know who Aaron Paul was, but they needed whoever picked up that correspondence
to be able to track them.
Mm-hmm. So Blanca missed her perception roll with a 1. Aaron Paul made his perception roll with a 20. So he spotted the mark waiting for him, and he walked up to her as a bard and charmed her.
And
I remember the write-up on this, actually, now that you guys are talking about it. Yeah.
Oh, it was awful, because here's Banny and Bjorn sitting in a vehicle on the opposite side of the street, going through their regular banter, right? Because those guys, they're like the odd couple.
Right. They are.
And they're bickering with each other, and the realization that something was wrong was when Cornell emerged. He was on the other side of the post office watching the back door. He emerged from the front door with his arms up.
It's like, oh,
she's gone.
Yeah. Both of us charge out of the
It hit the fan, and it was a 2.5 hour blitzkrieg of intensity after that, where they were trying, because they were so close to losing Blanca permanently.
Forever.
She was in thrall of this master, puppet master, right? He'd been manipulating a doppelganger for over a year.
Yeah,
She's a 17-year-old
some
wizard
17-year-old wizard, level 3 wizard isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah.
He owned her, right? This is the first time she had any kind of reckoning, like, somebody's got my number, and it's the same number I use on other people. And yeah, I was fully reconciled that she was gone if they didn't catch him.
Were you running this, or was John running this?
I was running this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Blanca's
Yeah,
an NPC, right?
John's character nearly died. Because they split in the middle. Banny went one way. Bjorn stayed on the boat, just kind of as a backup plan, because they kind of knew Blanca had finally she'd been sent away as a distraction, and now it was just Bjorn and Aaron Paul on the boat. Bjorn still didn't know where Aaron Paul was. Finally, he got a break on his perception rolls and figured out through all the illusions and all the misdirection, that's the guy. So Aaron Paul, they're close enough to shore. He jumps off the boat and starts to swim. Bjorn dives in after him and transforms into a bear at some point, catches up and just mauls him.
And then sunk with them.
But not without taking some damage in return, right? So here they are sinking, the two of them together. And I think John blew his swim check. So he was descending.
He just stead clasped on him. He was like, I'm going
to finish him. I don't care if I drown.
I will.
But he managed to pull off a roll or two here, and he surfaced, had just a handful of hit points, and he swam to shore and met up with Blanca and Danny.
Yeah, we
rode in a cab trying to follow it from the shore.
And the cab fucking left us behind. He didn't stick around. It's like I said, hold on a second here, and he just
thanks for
off.
the lira.
Yeah. Fuck you. Anyway, that was very.
It was very intense. It was really galvanizing. I mean, we'd come off of the previous session with the Fangs over Cardington, which was another very visceral.
I think New Chatel was second, or was let's see. I think New Chatel was our second mission because Witch Hunt was first.
Okay.
New Chatel was second, and Cardington was third. But yeah, two very galvanizing missions back to back. And I would say Witch Hunt was like an introduction to these two different personalities, the odd couple personalities.
Yeah, that was the very first mission you guys did.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And yeah, we basically what was her name?
Mike and Ken, you guys had easily 8 months of adventures before then.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that sounds right.
It was right after Dave passed that I reached out to all the old friend network, and I'm like, our friend's gone, yada yada yada.
Let's
John, and I had been talking with Eric for a couple of weeks prior to that. I was using him to kind of bounce ideas off of. I'm like, here's the campaign. I need some ideas. You and I have gamed together. Help me kind of generate new material.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then John was like, hey, we should game. I'm like,
can we do this? Can
At
we?
At this point, we probably were already trying it out online. So it's like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was like, okay, John, meet Eric.
I mean, and we had met before, we had played before, but it was like to actually play together was a different experience. Yeah.
I'm like, these guys are oil and water in real life and in the game.
Yeah. It is true. There's moments where I'm like, that's John. But I will say, he has really just come to really absorb all of this so deeply, and it's like he everybody is precious in this space, except Rob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's how
chomp,
I feel.
chomp. But anyway,
chomp, chomp, bash, bash.
Yeah, glub glub.
Frontline fighter,
Yeah. He sees all these moments as precious, and he sees this whole experience, this whole thing as just being so important in his life, and that's actually really amazing. He casts respect in that space, and I am glad that he's
well, and that's kind of a new page in his story, right? Because John historically didn't. I mean, he had his own worlds, and those were the most important thing. So to have, I mean, when we started the Shadow Empire, that was really my first reconnecting with John after a few year hiatus.
Yeah.
And I had sent him I think a 3 or 4 page synopsis of the world I wanted to run, and it just had a few names and kind of some ideas, and he generated all that material. Right? It was probably
gratuitous amounts. Oh my!
Let's call it 160 pages of stuff.
Jeez.
And Laura and I had gone out to the East Coast on a vacation, and I knew he was living in Poughkeepsie at the time, and I knew I wanted to swing by and pick up this care package from him. Oh wait, I'm thinking of a previous collaboration. That's another story.
Anyway,
he sends me all this material, and I'm like, whoa. And it was like, I mean, everybody here has played through it to a degree.
Yeah,
I don't think Ken has.
No Shadow Empire.
Your introduction was Acheron.
Acheron at a fairly senior level. I mean, Hakar already had Salah and everything when Tagara.
Yeah, well, he got Salah at like level 4 or something. It was pretty early.
it was pretty early, and Rainier died at level 2.
I think you came in around 5 or 6.
Yeah, 5 or 6 sounds right.
Yeah.
5.
Okay, that's right. But yeah, so John and I have had a long history of competing and collaborating, and I consider myself his muse, because I brought him out of his corporate security world back into the role-playing world and the writing world, back when we were playing with Weston. And that's kind of when I kind of shook his tree and some fruit fell out. I'm like, John's going to write again. And it was shortly after that he pulled back a lot of his short stories he'd written years ago and put them into a compilation book. What's the name of that? In the Fading Light was the collaboration. I did the cover for him. He took all his old short stories and tightened them up, edited them, and published them. And he'd started on another one, and it was a year later he started on his zombie novel. And of course, we had no idea that was going to blow up the way it did.
Right.
I painted the cover for him. I think it was in like October or November. He'd finished his editing pass and published it in, I'm guessing, January. It was late January. And it only took 2 weeks for that thing to go viral. And we watched that thing go from the basement of Amazon to the #1 in horror fiction. And it was like, we were just like, what does this mean? What does it mean? Copies were just like flying off the shelf. He's like, I don't know what to do. And it was a Saturday afternoon that he and I were talking on the phone, and he's like, I called around to see what I should do, and I got a call from Penguin approached me, and they're like, who's your agent? He's like, I don't have an agent. And this was like on a Saturday afternoon. By Sunday night, he had an agent.
Yeah.
And so Monday morning, he was negotiating with Penguin for a 3-book series. And we're like, that's the shit, John. That was pretty cool.
Freaking rad, really.
It's super.
Yeah. And they extended it. They gave him a couple of extras, but the best profits he made were under self-published. They gave him in advance when he signed with Penguin, but it wasn't until he'd finished writing, I think, his 4th book that they actually sent him another check again, because he had actually earnings past his his initial.
Gotcha.
Oh, the initial
Got the signing bonus, right?
Yeah. So he's like,
Not a
yeah,
bonus.
it was pennies per book, but the advantage of being through a big publisher is that you get a lot more distribution, right? You're in every Barnes and Noble across the country and around the world.
Does that even matter now?
It kind of doesn't, right? Self-publication, if you've got a good marketing arm, is probably, I mean, the profits are way better because
you're not paying everybody else.
He was making at self-publishing, he makes dollars on a book. Through a publisher, it's pennies.
I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about, the brick wall foundation,
brick
and mortar. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the term. I back in the day, I was in one of those once a month, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I was in a bookstore. Like it's been probably 3 years since I've been in a bookstore.
I love to go into Barnes and
out of
Noble.
this scenario. Let's go pre-COVID. How often were you going into bookstores?
Once or twice a year, maybe.
I mean, the only reason why I went was because of my kids. More often than that.
I used to love going to Barnes and Nobles, but it's been like a 7,
Barnes and Nobles and
6 or
Hastings.
7
Yeah.
year stint since I've been stepped foot in a bookstore. Now, there's a big old bookstore in Portland. I didn't even get to that one. I was planning on going to it because they have one level that's all tables for Warhammer games.
That's cool. Hey, did you make it to Uno Mas?
It didn't.
That's bummer.
It is on the docket. I'm going up there again.
Oh, nice. Do you know when you're headed?
October. This month, end of this month. This is part of the miles plan that I was talking about. I'm gonna shred a whole bunch of different credit cards, just get rid of a whole bunch of credit cards and use like 3, because one is a miles card, and I want to maximize miles so I can do travel.
AKA Gen Con card.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's an Amex, and not everybody accepts
Not everybody
Amex.
takes Amex.
So I got a Visa and I got an Amex. Oh man, do I really want to keep my Discover card?
Nah.
I hate Discover.
My girlfriend thinks you should keep Discover.
Why?
She works for Discover.
Oh, there you go. Discover was started by Sears. What happened to Sears?
Well, they turned into a financial company, apparently.
Well, apparently they send out repairman to do stuff too. They've got like a handyman network.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, Craftsman Tools. That's not Sears, is it? Is it still Sears?
I don't know.
No, they sold that.
They sold it off. Okay.
They sold that to some other company, and now it's in Lowe's.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
So let's see. Do they still have Whirlpool? I don't know.
Whirlpool is its own animal now, for sure.
I want to say Discover is no longer part of Sears, but
Kenmore. Oh, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it branched out. Kenmore was Sears. Yeah.
Kenmore is what it was.
Yeah. Which, I mean, really, we had a washer and dryer that lasted us almost our entire military career, and I mean, seriously, I'll give it up. These weren't even like the super high end, right? They were just like a good middle of the curve,
the bell curve. Not super duper on features, pretty common.
Duper, but yeah, dude, they did like 14 years, and it's like, you smell bad, and you just went bad. Okay, next.
Yeah, we've saved enough that it doesn't matter.
We need to go in the campaign to the stateside, right? To go over to
Vineland.
That's very different.
What's that?
Kanaka and Chicago.
Yeah,
Chicago.
Well, Sears was already a thing, right? Sears was founded in like the early 1900s, somewhere around 1905, 1906 or something.
Dude, yeah.
So they could potentially exist.
Their catalog was
I think you should rename them slightly. So there's instead of like Sears Roebuck, do it like Sears something else.
Some other company that they merged with, right?
Yeah,
Sears and Schlemmer. I don't know.
Something just to give that slight change so everybody knows who they are.
I would definitely do it in a more of an Icelandic name.
Yeah. So yeah, find the translation of Sears in that language. Right?
Well, the best part is
what does Sears mean?
Nothing.
I assumed it was a name.
Yeah, just a name. But at the same time, if you look at the entirety of the Midwest,
Yeah, Richard Sears.
if you look at the entirety
What
of the Midwest,
ethnicity is that? What's his history? What's Sears' name come from?
Oh,
Richard Dudley Sears was an American tennis player.
no. Richard Warren Sears.
Dudley, Dudders, they called him.
Look at that mustache.
He's from Minnesota, so that means he's probably from,
English
He's
descent.
probably Dutch.
No, English descent. Both parents English descent.
Okay.
But
Icenian bastard.
Yeah. So let's find the Icenian translation of Sears for names, right? And then.
Well, the other aspect of it is it doesn't necessarily need to be like Norway or Icelandic or any of that stuff. It could also be native to the area, because you think about Illinois is a name of a tribal name or a Native American name, and Minnesota is a Native American. It's funny, if you look at the entirety of the East Coast, you could probably say, or East Coast and Midwest and all the states across, most of that is like 85 to 90% Native American names.
Well, so if you go back to like the original department stores, Selfridge is one of the, I think, the earliest department store in Britain. Right.
Suffrage?
Selfridge is
Selfridge. I'm like, Selfridge.
So he set up a department store downtown London, and was like, he invented departments, right? So you've got perfumes, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And it was the first time they moved away from bespoke clothing to pre-made clothing, and I think Sears and Roebuck kind of stole that concept to capitalize on it in America. So
interesting.
Maybe keep Roebuck but replace Sears.
Yeah, because Roebuck is kind of the understated name that could elevate.
Yeah. Roebuck sounds like caviar eater level.
Well, and then it's if you think about it, then you make that connection. Whereas if you keep Sears, it's obvious what the connection is.
That's
true.
If you
replace Sears but keep Roebuck.
Like our current mission in the other group on Thursdays, we've got an actor who's just signed with Metro Goldwyn Mayer. No, is it MGM?
No, it is MGM, but you've swapped out some of the words. What are they? It's
isn't it Metro Goldwyn?
It was. I think it was like Goldwyn Pictures or something. It was like.
It was clearly MGM is who you were referencing. Yeah.
But it was different enough. You're like, oh, okay, it's adjacent.
Yeah.
But again, that's going back and looking at the history of how they formed, and then just picking the other path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it should be a Native American name, but I don't know what I would put for the alternate name for Roebuck.
I'm anxious to explore the American continent with this world because the Vikings didn't leave and the Pilgrims never got a foothold. I mean, it's Native American tribes merging with Viking tribes and forming this awesome East Coast economy all the way to Chicago.
Yeah.
Right. And Kanata, which is really Ottawa and north, there's the big trading grounds, is all the Canadian tribes unified. They've become a nation.
This is going to be more like a Shadowrun land.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really different, I feel like. You aren't going to have the English, Dutch influences creating their colonies, the French up north and the Spanish south. I mean, it's just so different.
Yeah. Clovia, much like France, did the Louisiana Purchase, right? That was sold.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, no, that's Bassina. Bassina is still owned by Clovia.
This is what's intimidating about a Keith Haney campaign.
What?
Keep it.
You have to know your alternate history.
You've got to know your alternate history. It's like, no, dumbass, that's not Louisiana.
Well, that was hard because John was asking a couple of sessions ago.
Yeah.
Because when we met Sachmo on the airship ride.
Right.
I still kind of have a little bit of that African American experience, but it's much more diminished.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the way it
Right.
happened through our channel. I kind of, because the Spaniards lost Martinica and they moved to
Yeah, the
Pascagoula,
Berbers.
Florida.
Yeah.
So they own the Florida Peninsula and a little bit of Georgia, and that's where all the Spaniards ended up. And with their experience with the Montanicans, I can see a repeat of a little bit of that slavery.
Okay.
Right? It's not going through the same channels where you pull people out of West Africa,
right,
get them through the islands and up in. But I also know that it's good storytelling to kind of have a little bit of that tension down in the South, right? Oriole, I think, is where Louisiana is. New Orleans is Oriole in my world. And that is the most important port in America, right? That is the base of the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
It's the funnel for everything going out. It should be the most important place in America, but for whatever reasons. Right? in my world, it is where, you still
culture
have the swing and jazz were still born in that area for reasons adjacent to what our reality is. But yeah, I can't wait to fully explore that. And even Calafia, which is not even full California, it's kind of a smaller version of it.
Uh-huh.
I still want that to be Hollywood, right?
Well, and it is, and it's actually, I mean, Benny did get to set foot in that space, and he did get to have that like desert Western experience, and he kind of lives that out in his own little way in
the bow tie.
Burgundia.
Yeah, we know. Yeah,
it's
the tie. Yeah.
The bow tie was a special instance, but it's the six gun. It's
bolo
tie.
The
bolo tie. You. And the Bighorn 66, which was definitely made in Lapland.
I love the naming conventions for our weapons have come together so nicely, right? The Bighorn 66, the Battle of Little Bighorn, right?
Yeah,
it was a pivotal weapon in there.
Well, we're planning on adding in the we have a spreadsheet of possible future additions we can add in, and Ryan's added in. Do you know what a mare's leg is? It's basically a cut down lever action.
Oh, that's right. It's the little guy. It's the little.
The little guy.
Yeah, it basically has like, they cut like 6 to 8 inches off of the stock, and then they cut the barrel as well. And that's called a mare's leg.
So yeah, it's like this big, and then it goes to this big.
Yeah, exactly. So he's calling it the little horn.
I saw it. Oh wait, that was in the spreadsheet. We put the Derringer in the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So again, the thing about Keith is that he's always wanting to build more. It's like this would be about the right time where you'd be like saying, "I got this itch."
Time to start a new campaign, gentlemen. You're level 8. Yeah, reroll.
Time to start over, bitches. Here's a new world.
John dropped something last week or the week before. He's like, "Well, when we're done with Burgundia and we move back to," and he was talking about Sword and Board Fantasy. I want to do this and I want to do this, and I'm like, "There's a post Burgundia world?"
Yeah.
I don't think there is anytime soon.
No,
if I have any say.
I have spent more than a fair amount of my gaming career playing in that high fantasy arena and longing for this escape to something low fantasy, high grit with gunplay.
Yeah, honestly, we were searching for that for 2 years before we played Burgundia. We messed with several, high science fiction, all sorts of other things. We were looking for not sword and board high fantasy.
Yeah, the Pathfinder stuff. Okay, we did D20 Modern, just a little taste of that. That was before everybody's time, except for but there the Pathfinder edition had some cool shooty shoot stuff, which was
For gunslingers.
where the gunslingers came in. It's like, okay, they're allowing us to look at guns. But
you can look at them now.
Yeah, there they are, and it's in the fantasy element of mixing in the gunplay with swordplay and with actual spellcasting and all that stuff. Really, like you said, it's founding element. But we did also do the high science fiction with. Oh crap!
Well, we did Olympus Falling and Fragged.
You guys played Fragged, but there was also a Shadowrun adventure that John played.
Oh yeah, okay.
And we were up against the meth mage. That was such an amazing set of story that he pulled together, because it was super gritty. Everybody was just basically.
That was 2012.
Yeah, remember? Twilight 2012.
Because the Aztec calendar was the end of the world. That was as far as their calendar went. So it was all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Who knew it was actually 2020?
Yeah.
Just a
when you're predicting that far ahead, being off by 8 years, that's within some margin, right?
Ain't bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Oh, and there's the other one where I played that dwarf with the mean skills with
that was John's one shot.
Yeah.
That was good. That was really good.
I mean,
was he here local then?
He was.
He showed up and we played for 2 days.
He stayed at my house for a week, and we did we game once or twice?
We only did once. We wanted to do twice, but we only got one in.
Yeah, that would have been one of those sloppy all-nighter type of games. I could totally see it.
It was so good. Well,
he was still smoking back then, so he'd have his every 2 hours he'd go out for a quick smoke break.
Gotta
go. Yeah, a triple bypass will change your smoking habit.
Yeah. Damn.
No, that was a really cool set of characters. You had the chemist dwarf. You had the Maori warrior with the big old machine gun. I'm trying to remember who else there was.
I think I run the African dude with the afro.
Yeah.
He was like a gun runner or something.
Yeah.
And we were all considered ne'er-do-wells, right?
We were essentially prisoners. We were recruited out of our life sentences, basically, to go run this mission.
Yeah, that's right.
We were some sort of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's perfect.
I guess the only question I would say is that if the expansion for the world is next in, Keith time, not in still there's Kurg Union and other Europa to happen in terms of the general populace, let us say. But in Keith time world, if we're going over to Vinland to start getting into that so you can go back to your world building fetish, then it's how many other languages we got to get, or is this whole new characters?
I think there were 3 that I cut, right? Because I had a language for Mexico, I had a language for the United Native Tribes.
That's right.
Which is impressive considering all the languages they had.
Yeah. Well, I made a settlement that was Kanata. It was right next to Chicago. It was right across there, where it was the major trading post where the Native Americans who had melded with the Viking culture traded with the indigenous people who had not assimilated in this Ottawa trading post, and it was a mega city.
Crossing over the lake, or having the lake as the boundary between them, or something along those lines.
It seems like it was on the west side. They didn't have the lakes to deal with. It was dipping far enough down that it almost touched Chicago.
Oh, got it.
I gotta go find. They're up on our little private site.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've looked at those maps, though.
Yeah.
But to touch on Ken's question, is this a new organization, or is Knock Richter operating in the new world?
Well, it feels like there's an opportunity to do something different and not tie it back to Angelica and her whole storyline.
I agree. Yes.
A separate organization, because the whole world had to deal with the
Same
crossing.
shit, right?
And they all probably had different ways about it. I'm looking at the map now. I've got Vinland, Messina, Viceroyalty of New Montanica, Calafia, and Pascua, Florida, and Mexico. So we've redrawn the lines in a big way. Yeah. So Ottawa is that huge trading post. I'm seeing that as kind of a mega city where the best of the Native American tribes from the Canada area is focused down there in their mega city that trades with the Vinlander Vikings.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I suppose you would just pick one of these, 5, 6 territories out there and base us out of one of those to explore the surrounding.
What's the most interesting place to inhabit, right? The rule of cool comes in.
Well, the thing that's pretty phenomenal, so Orleans, and there's Ottawa, and if Ottawa is a mega city, there's going to be all sorts of stuff that flows through there. Those being two hotbeds.
Yeah. To me, there's two places, right? There's Orleans, which is New Orleans, and Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, Tormund is New York City, Manhattan area.
I don't think we want to be Vinlanders though, because that's going to be too close to Knockrichter. We would want a different flavor. I would assume.
I would totally play a Native American, and it would be so cool to see the mixture of culture inside of that space, because you have the what were you saying, Michael?
Oh, well, I had two things to say. I was going to make a joke about us, playing
adopting
cultures that we totally have no
background, no ability.
Yes.
Yeah. But on a more serious note, that could actually be an interesting way to take it, as they know what this continent has been like for the last several hundred years prior to the crossing.
Right.
And then all these foreigners start coming in, and the landscape is changing, and they're trying to maintain some sort of balance over in the new world.
Yeah.
And they're kind of doing it as the old guard type situation. I don't want to fuel or suppress Keith's creative juice, but that could work. That could be an option.
I mean, like you could allow 1 or 2 fish out of water from Europa.
Well, that's the beauty of it is you have Ottawa, which is this now burgeoning city, but on the northern edge of Ottawa it's still almost frontier land, and it's like nobody owns property. It's not an owned situation. It is open land, and tribes actually move and flow and settle and make deals with each other to occupy the same spaces and then go their different ways, and wars erupt, and all the infighting that would happen with nomadic or mobile tribes.
So here's the thing. Do you go in a John-esque direction, in which what I mean by that is whatever the native sort of country is that we've gone into, then he draws upon the steeped lore of that region and that area, like, and that's therefore the twist and the turn takes is like,
it gets harder because we're taking a second. The European migration didn't happen in the same way.
Oh yeah,
history is entirely jumbled. It's a crapshoot everywhere.
I mean, that's what I mean. Does it go in the direction of the coyote spirit and things that I don't know crap about? But I'm just like speaking out of my ear, saying from stuff that I remember vaguely on a couple specials, which are like the heritages of this land before the Europeans came, just in the same way that we did.
Careful, Ken, you're treading on dangerous ground. All right, keep going.
USA. Anyway. No, but Magnetia was very much a focus on that lore, right? And when we went into not Kyrgyzstan, it was really about Budapest, and it was about, there's a lot of that superstition. And what was the other one? I'm trying to remember. But you know what I mean?
That's what John does. He researches the folklore of the area and digs it up, but it's not necessarily John's.
But to Keith's point, the history divergent is much greater in the New World than it is in Europe.
Else. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's In the new world, it's almost completely whatever you want to define. Whoever runs an adventure here first gets to pick what everything is, kind of.
Yeah, and
It's really the Wild West, right?
Yeah, well, and I can see this huge gap right in the middle of this place because there's not railroads crossing, and in fact, in some cases, the idea of railroads crossing or any sort of a connectivity between coasts is actually kind of dire. You have this no man's land that is tribal, entirely unmapped or uncharted, or maybe it has.
The Native Americans, much like in our world, got displaced even in this world, right?
Yeah, they got pushed to the center.
The Louisiana Purchase allowed the French to kind of push up in there. And in our world, they didn't get very far. They're like, well, we explored some of this, we mapped it out, but let's just sell it.
Yeah, and that's Bacina, yeah?
Yeah, Bacina, they pushed all the way up into Canada very far before the King Hlodewig conducted some extra dimensional experiments that compromised pretty much everything from Texas north into this like completely, we'll call it, dealing with the repercussions of a giant breach.
Oh boy!
So
the bleed over.
They were getting ready to sell. They're kind of in the place where they're like ready to sell the territory back to the native tribes, but it's an extinction maneuver. They're like, you can have it back. We're going to sell it to you, but we have fouled this up in ways that things from the Middle Welkin will hunt you and destroy you ad nauseum.
Okay.
So Northern Bacina is completely like a wasteland because of their experimentations.
Jeez. That's fascinating.
So
it was kind of like their atoll.
Yeah.
They didn't the nuclear option out there.
For that reason, Ottawa becomes an interesting place to ground an adventure group, because now you're dealing with a neighboring state in flux, right? You're watching contract negotiations between the native tribes and the King Hlodewig selling back the land that they stole from these tribes. And it's not a favorable deal. So
not at all. And it's like, oh yeah, you take it as is, but we're gonna,
Yeah.
I'm sending it as
right next to that, you've got the Viceroyalty of New Montanica. So think, there are a few notable black cowboys in history, but now think of the entire Colorado, Utah area populated with Montanicans, right? So you've got black cowboys everywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. Yeah, they were well suited to the Spaniard Plains, but man, it's dry. It's super dry here.
Well, I mean, it's a lot like Spain, right?
Yeah.
Spain's pretty arid.
Yeah. Hey. Goodness.
It's fun to tap into a lifetime of gaming and historical fiction and just kind of see what your id and your ego turns out.
Oh, and I will say that this is it's so much more diverse. It's so much more difficult to really nail down. There's so many other paths that are potential because we are such a low population area back in the 1900s.
Gosh.
I mean, like hundreds of thousands of people, maybe in the millions or something for the entire continent. And now we're just ridiculously packed. But yeah.
What's really interesting about Vinland then too, besides obviously it feels like there are 3, 4 to 5-ish different kind of like feelings of zones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it's like, what do you want it to feel like? I mean, do you want it to, I just mean like, does it feel like the Old West in a certain degree, right? Where Montanicans rule out there to the west side. And I don't know, right? The way that it would feel in terms of campaign setting. Because Europa, pretty much in these areas until you get to the Kurg Union, the main Europa has this feel. Mm-hmm. Which we defined. And yeah, it is like very noir, and that feels like the way it could feel like in the very populated Ottawa. But I don't know how it would feel. You go out west and it's kind of like the wildlands, and it gets crazy quick or something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to reimagine the East Coast, as all the way out to Chicago. Thinking Leif Erikson, all those early Nordic adventurers kind of came out. What if they stayed, right? They already integrated decently with the native tribes that they interfaced with. And if you look at their two cultures, they're not so dissimilar that they wouldn't mesh well. They couldn't. I mean, if you made a melange of the two, it would be a net positive. There's no conflicting
ideologies
in there.
Yeah.
It feels like a
survivalists.
A good +1, right? So I feel like Vinland is a very strong state that Viking and Native American live side by side. What does that look like in 1930s?
Would they still be Native American at this point?
Well, right.
Should we settle on a terminology so we stop referencing that? That would probably be better for the situation long term.
I actually did take it off path there. Let me see if if you go to the site, I think it's under cultures.
I couldn't find this world map you're looking for in the old site. I'm like,
it's under world.
If you just click on world,
I just get cosmology. Oh, I should just click on world. Thank you.
But if you go to nations,
okay.
Here are the other languages, right? Kuurish, which is Kanata language. That's the United Tribal language. Of course, Spanish for Pascua, Florida.
And we still have Ostrogo, so I think this is an old list, right?
Yeah, Ostrogo, yes.
Ostrogo is for Visigonia.
I thought that would been removed, but maybe
that's correct.
Okay. It's still real, yeah. It's still canon.
Yeah, so the bottom three languages there, the Nahuatl from Mexico, that's really kind of an evolution of the language spoken by the Aztecs.
I was going to say Mayans or Aztecs.
I think it was it's been 3 years since it's a little fuzzy. But yeah, that whole Mexican peninsula, if you remove the Spanish from that, that makes it far more interesting to the Mesoamerican experience of what if we hadn't interrupted this bloodthirsty human sacrifice tribe.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, the world wouldn't have ended.
2020 or 2012?
2012.
No, that's a great point, right?
I mean, a few more calendar days in there.
Yeah, just toss a few more in, we're good.
I mean, that's a really good point because I mean, like, they would still be really in existence if it wasn't for like the disease and gold obsession and horses.
So what is the term for the people that lived here before the Vinlanders showed up?
So the Vinlanders renamed the continent Lapland, or Land of Great Skies. So that's what I'm referring to the Americas as Lapland, based on the Viking definition for it. Much like any visitor to a continent, to a tribal system they've got many names for the same thing. The ones who arrive with a written language get to name things.
You win.
So that's kind of where I'm letting things carry forward. Is Lapland is North America.
Okay, so are they
Laplanders?
What LOPT Lapland?
Yeah,
because
like
the Vikings, they'll throw letters at you from every direction.
So the Vikings still call themselves Vikings or Vinlanders, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So the indigenous people would be Laplanders.
That makes sense.
something.
Landloppers? No, never mind.
Cindy Loppers.
I think it hit Ken a bit. I think we need to cut you off, Ken.
I haven't had a drink in a while. But I was
Oh.
thinking landlubbers, and I just was like landloppers. Yeah.
Yeah, I had started down this path, but I would really like to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 modules by March. The hardest one, of course, is this Noctrichter module, because it is the most in-depth and the most, it will be repeated, all the information there will be used over and over and over again. So it needs
That's why it needs to be in hard book.
Put your microphone down. Stop moving it.
No, why? Is it hurting you?
Yes. Every time you move it, we hear the sound of it moving.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
That's better.
Don't touch it.
But then when I'm far away, you can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's a good microphone then.
Yeah.
No, but that's why it must be in V2 of the hardback.
No.
Every time they're engaged, they will touch Noctrichter.
And it's an important piece of playing in the world. Eventually, those products may merge. Who knows where this thing's going, right? We made this for ourselves. We published it into books so that we would have a formal version of it. And any adoption of it is a bonus.
Yeah.
If we were trying to make money at this, we'd all be starving.
We'd all have day jobs, and we already do. So,
but if you could hit that subscribe button on the bottom left of your screen.
Do we have a subscription? Oh.
We would have to. We do have subscribers. We have 9 followers, but we don't get any money for this. We don't put any sort of front end.
You need 1,000 followers before you get a dime on YouTube.
Absolutely.
I guess I should go smash that like and subscribe button.
Smash that like, hit the little bell so that you get notified.
If all the likes come from the people who are actually part of the material, it feels a little like masturbation.
Oh, Levi loving, baby, just rub together. We're fine. No, and
the book is your lubrication.
Whoa! I'll just say the book gets me lubricated. That's.
Whoa. No, I mean,
I don't want to be in this channel anymore, guys. I'm good.
I feel dirty.
You started it.
I started it.
What's funny to me is to kind of look over to the bookshelf with all the binders that have been collected over the years for campaign after campaign after campaign. And knowing that there was a high desire to kind of give it more polish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Shadow Empire was the last time I considered a real publication.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think Acheron could have been published, but it wouldn't have been that much different than any other fantasy world out there.
Right. You know? There are 1,000 of these things out there right now that you could buy that are just as good and just as fun and no different from anything else.
Yep.
I think that's why Burgundia took off, is that we all recognize that nobody had a game like this.
Nobody has a noir setting and deep investigation, not so much fight all the time type of situations. Real world repercussions and examples, and I really like it. Not real world, mostly real.
Yeah.
Real situations, I guess. Real situations.
Well, that was
real situations with elves.
With elves, but it's the interpersonal aspects of it. It's like anytime that you're sitting in a situation where you're talking to another person and you jest and they get upset, and that back and forth starts to happen. It's like, oh, do I shoot them or do I just say, hey, I'm sorry, apologize, back it down, use some diplomacy instead of saying, oh, I'm tougher than you, I'm just gonna take you down.
What's fun to me in this environment is that forever we were kind of limited in our technology to trebuchets and castles and whatever version of Magic, and you can see all of these systems with D&D, Pathfinder, they're all kind of encroaching on the Renaissance, right? They're like, we want to pull ourselves out of sword and board, high fantasy, and bring in a few more elements to tell different variations on the story.
Right.
And Burgundia kind of just says, you know what, screw it. We're going to leave that and go nearly modern.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, just shy of modern to where it's not cumbersome. Modern is not cumbersome.
We have
because
rotary dial telephones.
Well,
cumbersome
when
in
you
the
go to
sense of
county, you just pick up a receiver and there's an operator on the
There's
other
an
end.
operator
Yeah.
person, yeah.
but it's like if you go high tech and high engagement, then you have all these different tracking elements and so forth that make it very difficult to run a peaceable campaign. Phones and stuff like that. I don't know how you could get away with the nuance that we get in a noir setting where everything has to be a little slower. Everything has to be, you have to travel to that place and you have to engage the people directly, and it's much more investigation.
I think there's a desire for that interaction in a generation of people who have dealt with supporting an artifice online of I have a presence on the internet, and it's this false front that I perpetuate. Right. We're going back to a time where everything is authentic. It's hard to fake things. And if you say something, it only goes to the distance of your voice.
Yeah. And it doesn't get used exactly against you. Not exactly. Nobody can secretly record you that you know of. Or the fact that the people who are the beautiful people aren't necessarily just the movie stars, and there are a lot of ugly people who are movie stars too. Banning.
Yeah,
I mean,
how did that happen?
It's like realistic, the real people that are out there. It's interesting because the U.S. is infamous for very pretty people playing these different roles, and and then you look at Europe has a lot of natural looking people who play certain roles, and you're like, that's the way it should be.
That's something that's kind of wild about this setting is the more that you describe Vinland and, Calafia and so forth, like you're right. I mean, there was a lot of cultural influence that was beginning to exude in the early 1900s from the United States of America, which would feel different. Yeah, back to Europe and everything, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, you look at the influences, and I was looking at the map and saying, okay, what was the population? And it said 73 million people. I'm like, okay, but in this state, in the way that this world would exist, it would be half that, if not a quarter that, just by way of natural immigration was like a forced situation. Occupy this place and then just roll across the countryside.
Except I would say that it doesn't sound like a smallpox disease wiped out a lot of Native Americans, though, too. So I don't know.
Yeah, but that was intentionally done. That was a known quantity, and they rolled that out.
We had a slower integration if you think of the Vikings making their way across that northern passage, kind of dropping from Newfoundland on down the coast.
Yep.
There was more time for integration. Those things just wouldn't have happened.
But it's like you didn't have, Iceni going, okay, colonist style, let's get over there.
Right.
And as they started trying to get over there, they would have been repelled. It's like, okay, if you want to play...
Keith, you probably dealt with this. When was the Black Death? When was the plague?
So the Black Plague was really about a different lifestyle and ignoring good hygiene.
Well, yeah, ignorance of, right? But when the Alakara come, isn't it the 1400s?
You can dispel that, right? It was like, I forget what year it is. It's in the back of the book. When was the crossing?
It would have happened.
The crossing was in the 1200s, wasn't
1200s?
it? Wasn't it 700 years prior?
That's really close, yeah.
You almost got
Black
the
Death. Black Death happened in the 1300s, 1350s, and I expect that would be one of those things that did get controlled very quickly.
Yeah, right. I mean, when you have the ability with magic to say, Disease? What disease?
But also you have religions that actually show power.
Yeah,
Well, that's the other kicker, though, is we're talking about arcane magic. There's not as many ways to heal and prevent curse. It would probably be more of a cultural thing of seeing these otherworldly people come and they have good hygiene and we try to emulate them.
okay.
And 100 years later, we have better hygiene and prevent the Black Death.
From being nearly as bad. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Black Death
mean-
from being nearly as bad. Right.
Yeah, we've already talked about how Napoleon didn't exist in Burgundia because yeah,
Because Ludwig has been in power for 200 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you make
That's
yourself
awkward. Yeah.
immortal for whatever reasons, you don't have to lose power.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
That's true.
there's a lot of figures that kind of fade into the background because of the way that things are set up.
Well,
But I do
no
think,
French
like,
Revolution.
yeah, no French Revolution, so
Right.
all
There's
of
no
that.
Don Quixote.
No Don Quixote. Man, there's a lot of. I mean, those personalities may still crop up and show up and maybe migrate and move around and so forth. But it
That's
would
what's fun to do is right. If you find a figure in history that's interesting to you, there's a way to reintegrate them no matter
Yeah.
what.
Like Joan of Arc could have still existed, just in a different manner.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and she
Right.
definitely was burned at the stake.
Exactly, she was.
Oh, wait.
Like,
It was part of probably the Clovian witch hunts back in the 1500s or something.
Yeah.
Whenever that would be appropriate.
Right.
you
Right.
brought
No,
us
she
back
was-
to, you brought us back around tonight to King 6.
You're welcome. That was
Yeah,
my
there you
plan
go.
all along.
The
No,
focus of that mission
kidding.
is the chief engineer of the witch hunts.
Oh,
He-
dang.
He's the figure who led that entire campaign to burn all the witches out of Clovia.
Oh.
Where he messed up was he pursued somebody across the borders and killed them in international territory, and now he became an international criminal and went into hiding. And he's been in hiding for 2.5 years,
Hmm.
and they just figured out where he was.
Bum, bum.
Somebody reported him to Knocktrichter,
Interesting.
Of course.
and he's
Oh.
he's not inside of Clovia.
Oh, he's a Norman. Normandy.
He's in Icenia Sud.
Okay. Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
Exciting.
So that's the setup for that mission. Is the most notorious witch hunter in the world is outside of a protected zone.
Mm.
And now creatures are going to bring him to justice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's got to be a cooperative effort with Icenia, though. That's
Well,
got to be.
The city that it takes place in is notoriously, I mean, for centuries, French pirates operated out of this town. So they operate as a city-state, even though the princess who runs Icenia Sud, sister to the queen,
Yeah.
she gets to run. Was it Bridge? Brood? What's it called? The coastal town that she rules from, but this little pirate town on the northern coast is kind of a Icenian summering place where people come to hang out on the beaches and just do their thing. So it's kind of this utopian, beautiful medieval city. I mean, if you look on the map, it's titled Saint-Mano. What's it called? Saint.
Samanoa, the high point of nothing.
I just need to go to my maps here. France. This is how so many of these adventures begin with. Where am I?
Hey,
There we go.
Bruges. Bruges. Okay.
It's not Brugge. It's Saint-Malo. So Saint-Malo is just on the just west of the border of Clovia. It's part of the conquered territory when Icenia invaded the mainland. But it's the history of Saint Malo, it's funny, is that the national drink there is still rum. The most popular drink in Saint Malo is rum because whatever reasons. But to have a pirate haven in Europe that is a rum drinking town, it's perfect.
I can't say no.
And if there's the old town Saint Malo, there's this little section that's just this medieval fortress town. That's where the adventure takes place, is in the steamy corridors and close roadways of Saint Malo.
Nice.
That's amazing.
I actually want the inspiration for this came one of my team members has family there, and he's there right now, so I'm kind of using him as.
Tell me about your French girls.
What's it like, And so, I mean, Switzerland, I could kind of say I'm going to go there and experience it firsthand, but between Google Maps and my co-worker here, we're figuring out this town, and so I.
See, you just can't stop world building, can you? Yeah, exactly. My name is Keith Haney, and I'm a world builder. Hi, Keith.
Wait, it's funny. I was having this conversation, I forget with whom, but recently we were talking about when I was a little kid, my brother and I would kind of tell stories to each other at night. We shared a room, and he's 2 years older than I am, and my mom had this old typewriter, the manual typewriter with 3 levels or 4 levels of keys. Mm-hmm. And he started off by typing out these stories on there, which were these really fanciful, dreams that he just kind of translated into text. And then he would illustrate he would like leave gaps in the typing and just fill it in. And there was like 3-page stories typed manually. Yeah. This just blew my mind. I'm like, wow. And he was just inventing worlds. You're meshing samurai culture, Christmas culture, just weird shit all mashed up together. But it lit the spark that eventually became my D&D bug. Because in 9th grade, I got the first book, the D&D box set. I remember
with the red dragon.
Yeah. I remember my mom. There's a bookstore, I don't know, a mile or 2 miles from my house. I had to coerce my mom to go over to this bookstore so I could go buy this box set. Right? I kind of duped her, and it's for school. It's just I want to go to a bookstore. Blah blah blah. So she eventually drives me over there. I buy the box set. It seems like it was $17 or something like that. Mm-hmm. For the original box set. Maybe it was 12, but I got this thing home, and it was like, I'm in 9th grade. I don't have any friends that want to play this thing. I just had kind of heard through the grapevine this was a cool thing. So I pull open the box. It's got module B2, Keep on the Borderlands on the inside. I'm like, so I read through this thing. I'm like, this makes sense. I kind of get it. So I called my little sister in. She's 3 years younger. I'm like, you want to go on an adventure? And she's like, yeah, of course. We were, we played together all the time. So I'm running this thing and doing it, I'm guessing probably 80% wrong. She had experience points and hit points mixed up. So she kept gaining hit points at the level of experience points. So like she became unkillable very quickly.
This doesn't seem to work.
This is great. 8,000 hit points.
Yeah. What's going to take to kill me?
And that fell apart fairly quickly, but it's one of those things where you go to school and you tell a couple of friends, you're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so, I heard he plays D&D too. I'm like, I got to find him, right? So it's like,
who is this person?
Lunchtime, you go seek them out. And that was really, I met Dave and John as a part of that exploration in high school. There were a cast of other characters: Rick Phillips, oh God, Dave Watley. I mean, we had all these guys that were kind of spread out. And what's weird is in the D&D circles, you kind of get these legendary people, right? Oh well, Tom Watley, he runs a campaign. He's kind of a killer DM though, so you got to bring your best game, right? So, and back in those days, your character sheet was you brought it like a passport. Like, I'm going to play tonight, and then DM would look at your sheet and go, yeah, you can't use that, and you can't have that. You're in, right? They'd edit out this really stupid crap that you got either from another DM or you made up and wrote it down yourself because you didn't care.
I rolled that much in gold.
Me.
I rolled that much in gold.
And if you looked at, those were back in the days when you rolled your character stats.
Right? Oh yeah.
And we had some of the most ridiculous runs of numbers, right? 18, 17, 17, 16, 16.
Yeah.
You'd take one score to make it look kind of legit.
My charisma is 8.
Yeah. I rolled 4, drop 1. I totally did it that way. Yeah. It's totally
so much of the ritual back then, we would get together and roll up characters, right? So you're like sitting around the tribal campfire.
Oh yeah.
Roll your dice. And what did you do? 3d6 redice the lowest, or roll 46 and drop the lowest? There was a whole camp separation there because 3d6 redice, you got a shot at redemption, but 4d6 drop the lowest. It was all laid out in front of you, and we had long debates.
You just roll it multiple times. You would you had to roll it 6 times, and as soon as you hit a bad stat, you would have to roll the rest, and you would document them, and then you would start a new row. Roll 6 again.
And we developed a culture where you have to have at least 2 15s for a keeper character. If you don't get that, throw it out and start over.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the evolution of that tribe was just ridiculous.
But it was fun in its time.
Yeah. When you're 16, 15 years old, anything makes sense.
Here's the thing. It's just the other day, I was talking with Ava, and she said, this is my character. It's a kobold. And this is my friend's character, and he's a dragonkin shaman. And I was like, okay, so when are we playing? Because I'll run a game. Just like, no, I'm afraid of that. No. I'm like, you said you wanted to. It's like, I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody to bring. We've got your brother, we've got your friend, and we've got you. We can do this. This is a perfect set of numbers. And she's like, nope, sorry. But we had played it back in the day, and we had just fun role-playing moments.
Okay. I'm going to ask you guys a question. I want you each to think about this. What has Dungeons and Dragons, let's say role-playing, done to influence your career? I'm going to start with you, Mike. So if you've been playing for, we'll say, a decade, a little bit more, how has it changed how you are at work?
I don't know if I have an answer for that. I really don't. I have to really think about that.
All right. Well, I'll let you think about that. Ken, how about you?
So I don't know about at work. I do feel like, let's go more formative. I feel like it helped me at school because it, in a way, it helped you kind of like create characters for where you were and where your peers were and where the jocks were so you kind of, I'd almost feel like that helped me not just have a bonded kinship with those who understood me, but also kind of like relate in a weird statistical way with what the surroundings were. And it helped me through school, certainly, to have people who could relate to me in that way. Career-wise, I don't know if it helped me to kind of see not so much D&D, role-playing and stats maybe helped me kind of like rationalize or comprehend things in terms of like, well, some people have more talent in one area or more exposure and experience than other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but does the aspect of being able to role play out ideas in this freeform thing inform how you interact with other people?
Let me step back in here. I would say in my current career, like where I'm at now, it has very little influence on it because it's technical. Either you know it or you don't, and either you do it or you don't. But in a more end user facing job that I I mean, I guess it's been like 7 years since I've worked one of those. But in one of those, yeah, I would literally flip a switch when I walked into somebody's office to help them with a technical problem. And I would almost be playing a character as I was helping them do this thing. And then, I walk out the door and I'm back to just my normal self.
Yeah, that's the question and the answer. Does that apply to you, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, role playing in that sense, absolutely. Especially as going up in the officer ranks, right? It's like I don't wear rank on sleeve. I'm just like a really normal guy. But then, oh, okay, I have to play Captain Johnson. Fill in the blank, right? It's like, okay, so what is my role? I mean, I can remember. You're right, pulling aside a guy who was a major and I was lieutenant colonel, and I had to like dress him down because he was doing something that was having a bad influence, right? And that was me saying, okay, how would it be? How would you play this? How do I need to be able to be role playing a senior officer correcting someone's behavior? I need to do this, right? Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. How about you, Eric?
So many thoughts come to mind.
Eric gets into character every Wednesday morning for that meeting.
Yeah. Well, I realize that the fake it till you make it is absolutely a thing, for one. And I would say that I learned that from role playing in the sense that when you stand up to the element will honor you. That's the thing that I found every time I approach the game in that way, where I stand up to the moment will honor me in some way, whether it's in death, but it's like living on the edge like that and taking chances on the edge and exploring ideas like that. And it's mostly interpersonal for me. I mean, role playing is what I do. I don't care about the minutia of, is this a perfect fit, or will I do the maximum amount of damage here? I don't look at any of that stuff. I get into a flow with that particular person or that particular identity. And there's all these characters. One of the characters that I had that I loved the most was Roman, the paladin, and he had his heart ripped out the first night that I played him. and it's like, okay, we'll res him because he's barely made any screen time as it is. But he ended up being this really formative character for me, where it's like, this is what it's like to be a paladin that's not like a zealot. He is not a person who is so enamored with the idea. He was flexible in his ideas. This person that he attached to was a woman who was kind of shady, but it's like he saw that there was some good in her and he tried to draw that out of her. And of course that's
Mary Magdalene.
There it is.
The corruptor.
But there was all these, every time that I step into character, I learn something about myself, and I also learn about a tool that I can use for the future when it comes to interacting with others, when it comes to, just personally for myself. And it kind of defines who I want to be. Who do I feel the best as?
Yeah. Well, and this goes out to all of you. Anybody can answer here, but has role playing empowered you in the real world?
I think so. I think that I would say empathy. Because I feel I do think that having role played different characters and having had the experience of interacting with others has maybe helped me on an empathic level. I mean, something that right now Eric said made me think about that, because then people make more sense. Like I don't have the same experience as somebody else, but if I put myself in that experience, then it's like, oh, I guess that's how I might feel and how would I act.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have been reading other people's actions for a very long time in order to stay either a step ahead of any, I would say, repercussions. And it's like, know what the teacher wants, know what your parents want from you, know what your siblings want from you. So I've had all these moments where I'm highly tuned to that. But there is sometimes it's like, what do I want? And what do I want gets explored in a character, and in a way that I've never experienced before. What do I want shows up in there.
I think this branch of questions would go really interesting with
more booze.
A person, well, also more booze, but
as you wish. I wasn't going to drink another one,
but also seeing. I know we did this 2-3 years ago. We all took that personality test.
Yes.
Because I'm listening to what you guys are saying, and I know I'm also mostly a different personality than all three of you.
Yeah, because you're like the inventor, or you're the
I'm usually some sort of introvert creative.
Yeah.
And you guys are almost all extroverts.
I don't consider myself an extrovert.
No. Okay. Well, you were. I don't think you took that test, but I know you two did. I'm sure you have taken one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're an EN.
So, and I'm actually not surprised to hear that you're more on the introvert side, Eric.
Yeah.
I think that comes with the territory and the career.
Well, it seems like everybody here probably is comfortable with introvert, but through life experience or job expectations has been moved across that line.
Yeah.
I was
presentations with hundreds
school.
of people or something that I have to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's not that I can't do it. It's just that it's not my preferred.
It's not your comfortable space.
Yes.
And I would say in my case, what I saw in the personality test is that in high school, I was an INTJ. The T and the F they were vying for power. And I've evolved as I got older into ENFJ. Weird.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to kind of, it's almost like putting yourself on a character sheet. Years ago, a guy I gamed with, we were playing Twilight 2000, probably a game none of you have heard of. It's kind of a dystopian post-apocalypse world. But he had introduced all of our characters in the world by bringing us as people into it. So he came to our houses and interviewed us in a kind of a strange narrative. Like he walks through the door and whatever room you're in, he's like, okay, sit down. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And then he dropped down like a yardstick on the front yard. And as a part of his thing, he's describing the yardstick as this dimensional portal. And so you're sitting there in your home, in your comfort zone. And he's like, you're sitting there and you see a portal open in front of you. What do you do? And of course, I had just gotten back from a bike ride. So I'm sitting there in my bike shoes, my Lycras, all that stuff.
Am I going to look like an alien wherever I end up?
And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I stand up. And this is like LARPing, right? So whatever I do, he's recording it. And I'm like, well, yeah, Keith would step through a portal. What the hell? And I step across the yardstick and he says, stop, hold your position. And he takes out a notepad and writes down everything I'm wearing and everything I'm holding. That's how I started in his world.
Wow. With these lovely Lycra pants and yes.
And so he'd done that to like 4 or 5 other members of our group. And we started this expedition into this world. Our character sheets were filled up with the shit we were wearing on the day in our house.
I kind of love it though. That's a clever way to start a whatever. Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Oh man, you see, that's the thing. Were you forced to go through the portal?
No, we did. There was no pressure to step across it. It was just purely an observational thing. I felt like a lab rat
That's
in my
funny.
own house.
Yeah.
That
Do you know
that
what that
kind
makes me think
thing
of real quick?
is
That makes you
difficult.
think of how your letters to each one of us inducting us into Nacht Richter.
Yep.
Please make that the last page of the hardback. That's all I'm going to say.
It is part of the module. So the introduction
Okay.
letter, the tickets that go with the letter are all in the back of the module.
Awesome.
I think it's an important introduction to this world, right?
Mhm.
To kind of bridge reality and unreality.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we all want to be there. And the closer it gets to feeling like it's real, the more we can pretend it is.
Yeah. Yeah. The more electric it is. I don't know.
So
How did you feel,
Keith,
Mike, when that letter arrived at your door? How did you feel? Because I didn't tell anybody those were coming out, did I?
No. I'm like, what the hell is this?
I think
What?
Go ahead, Ken. Mike, what? You know,
well, I'm trying to think if you had said something before sending them to me. You might have.
I might have spoiled your experience. You're
You
right.
might have spoiled mine.
Damn it. Yeah. When I got it, I was like, what the hell? I mean, and it looked weird enough that I wasn't like, well, this is junk mail, of course. But I'm like, so I like just tear open the envelope and it's the realization of the, frontal lobe that starts comprehending. Oh, I see what he's doing. Oh, this is fucking cool. And I think I laughed out loud, making Lillian, my wife, look over and say, what? It's like, oh, this is Keith's next campaign. I just got a mail for it, invited to join the secret organization. This is cool. Yeah. She's like, weird.
You guys are weird.
Nerd.
Nerd.
Yeah, nerd.
Mike, you were the other one in this group that got that same introduction. How was it for you? Even if you knew it was spoiled, what did it feel like?
Oh, I was excited, and I loved what you had put together. I think I knew the letter was coming, but I was stoked to receive it. And it was cool to have the train ticket and all that. I still have it all somewhere. I think it's packed up in one of the 4 boxes I haven't unpacked from a year and a half ago.
Forget if I gave mine to Ryan.
What I really loved is that there was kind of this implied pressure to bring your ticket with their first.
Yeah.
Everyone did
not
except for
anticipate that.
one person.
Ryan didn't bring his, and when the train attendant came up and asked him for his ticket and he didn't have it, that was like worth the 6 months of waiting for that. I was so glad somebody didn't bring theirs.
Like, this is going to cost you.
Well, because I remember I brought a hole punch with me.
Yes, you did. Yes,
in
you
my
did.
kit. I'm like, hand me your ticket. And this all goes back. It wasn't my first trip. It was I think it was a second or third trip to Switzerland. And by that time, I had downloaded the app for their rail pass service. I was really getting kind of cocky as a traveler. And I got on the train and I was just, jet lagged to the 9th degree. And I'm sleeping on the train, heading from Zurich to Bern. And I'm about halfway through the journey. I'm awakened by the ticketing agent. And she's like, passport and ticket or whatever. And I'm pulling out my stuff. And I forgot the password to the app.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm still waking up from jet lag, right? So I'm like trying to get my head on straight. And she's standing there leaning over me and getting more intimidating with every second. And I'm trying to punch in my password. Nothing's coming up. I recognize after about 2 minutes of fighting this thing that I'm going to have to send myself a password reminder, which who knows how long that's going to take.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, I'll be back with my supervisor. I'm like, oh shit, this just escalated.
You're about to be thrown off the rail. No ticket.
They aren't fucking around. She came back and the two of them were standing over me. I felt like a criminal. I'm like, I'm getting thrown off the train. I swear to God, I have a real ticket. I bought it electronically before I even left the United States. I was prepared, but they woke me up and blindsided me.
Wow.
I actually never got signed in, but her supervisor looked up my name on
In the
their
roster.
on their index and found my authorized ticket for me. I was like, I thought I was leaving this train in cuffs.
Yeah. You're going down. You're going down.
So I took that experience. I'm like, okay, I'm fucking with somebody.
Enter Ryan.
He rolled with it too, though.
Ryan's the paladin, right? He's playing a freaking paladin. So to violate a law was egregious to his whole nature. And so he doubled down on the shame of that, right? He didn't have the money to even pay the ticket. It was bigger than he could afford. But as soon as he got paid, where did he go?
Right to the train station.
Down to that Bahnhof.
Yep.
Here's my fine. Am I good? I was like, I love you, Ryan. This is going to be a great campaign.
Oh my gosh.
It was like a little shameful though, because he like made a point of going down by himself to pay his fine by himself. Yeah,
he walked from Habsburg Castle to Oberst.
Walk of shame down that hill.
I made that walk up and not down, and it was a hell of a walk.
I believe it.
I'm thinking it was just shy of 2 hours.
Jeez, it was no joke.
It was no joke. When you guys go out, you were training in the forest and all that stuff. I knew that one day I spent in Brugge. Is it Brugge? Yeah. Brugge Bridge. Yeah, Brugge. That this was my only chance to document how you guys were going to be at Noctrichter training camp. So I went all over that forest. I walked that thing, I don't know, 6 different trails. I got lost twice. When I finally got up to Habsburg Castle, thank God they were still open, because I was out of water and famished. And they in the Bailey area, the Bailey doesn't have those buildings on the south side. It's all just kind of this open flat terrace because everything's kind of been broken down.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there at their tables eating French fries and drinking a big ass beer. These guys are going to love this adventure. This is awesome. It feels weird to kind of place yourself in that future moment. And then when that future moment comes, to just enjoy that reward.
Yeah.
I am not a normal traveler. We'll just get that out.
Abnormal. Abby normal.
Abby normal. What kind of brain did you? Whose brain is this? Abby's?
Abby normal?
What? Abby normal.
I'm actually pulling up the map on. It won't be there for a while, but I'm pulling it up on Twitch to go over
for the castle.
Yeah, to Habsburg.
Habsburg Castle.
So I'm there at the castle doing the tour. Well, I was just planning to kind of walk around and inspect the ruins that are Habsburg Castle. And the west tower is intact, but the east tower is completely laid flat. But I'm standing there. I just finished my fries, had my giant ass beer. I was feeling a little refreshed. And there was a tour going through.
Oh.
And Lady Habsburg, so this actress was inhabiting the role of Lady Habsburg. And she was a pretty lady, but the Habsburgs, you know, with the Habsburg chin, it's kind of that. They were
Jay Leno.
They were over inbred, right? This family had some genetic collisions that weren't happy. They used to call it the noble chin or the royal chin or something like that, where they had that huge nodule that just kind of stuck out. They looked like the moon, right?
I was gonna say, or it was like Jay Leno, like degree.
Yeah, I mean,
well, it's like worse than that. Yeah,
you know, somewhere
oh my God.
Go look up a picture of some of the Habsburgs. They're
an unattractive, homely bunch.
Oh yeah,
that's what keeps it in the family.
Yeah, well, but these guys, they were money meisters, right? They controlled a good chunk of Europe through their banking systems.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's why. What the hell? That's why. The Harry family and the Habsburgs. What?
Well, see, the
Anyway.
funny thing is that we grew up, we learned American history, we learned European history. Most of this stuff sailed over my head, even though I was like way into medieval history in like high school.
Yeah.
We go to the library and pull books off to read them to generate ideas for campaign stuff.
Right.
AP Euro was my favorite class in high school.
Which was?
AP European History.
Nice.
What did you love about that class?
I honestly don't remember. It was
Just cool.
how
right?
many years ago was that? It was 15 years ago.
Huh?
Yeah.
But it was, it's one of those. I think it was one of those things where it was one of the few teachers I had in high school that actually liked their job and liked teaching and liked their subject matter. And it was also, like, yeah, previous history classes had kind of brushed on all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, hey, one day on this, one day on this, one day on this, and then we're done with European history in 2 weeks. To spend
Right.
an entire semester in it and actually delve into some of these things and why some things happened. The why on why some history happens is fascinating.
It's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But did you ever see the movie Teachers? It's
No.
probably from the 80s. There was a movie, Nick Nolte and a bunch of other kind of popular actors in that era were all teachers in this kind of failing urban high school. But there was this homeless guy who wandered off the streets into the class. He just looked studious enough that he looked like a substitute teacher. So they kind of sent him into this history class, and it kind of awakened all the knowledge he had from when he was through school. And he was holding history class in real time. So when they were crossing the Delaware, he turned over the tables and they all jumped on top of the tables and they were rowing across, and he's reading out the fiction of crossing this thing while the entire class is in semi costume making the journey across. These kids had the greatest education for the 3 or 4 weeks that this homeless guy was teaching the class, because he didn't have any rules and he knew history.
Right.
Eventually the guy got thrown off campus and the kids were like, what? No. And they got a regular teacher and they all hated it again.
Mm-hmm.
This has ruined everything.
Yeah.
But I remember I think inspired from that movie, I remember Caden, when he was in junior high school, had a history teacher who was teaching, I think, Civil War, and turned all the tables and desks over to make them into like the lines of combat. Troops. And have everybody break into groups. I'm going to try, I think, to channel that same kind of idea that if you live it, you'll own it.
Right.
And role playing to me is that teaching tool that we all respect.
Yeah. What made me think of what Mike said was like something I'll never forget was watching The Western Tradition. That was the name of the show on PBS. The Western Tradition was this series, and I think it was set in UCLA. He was a professor. It was like 52 episodes long, and he started in like ancient Egypt, and he went all the way through like the freaking Renaissance and everything. But he connected it, and he was really just like this engrossing kind of European, British kind of a voice and everything, describing. He had great visual aids. I was hooked because it was similar. It was like the why, right? And then like, this is when the merchants kind of like took over the power away from the monarchies because that's where the money was. And, I just remember those different aha moments for me watching this program, which was more powerful than any, history class that I had. But
so many teachers of history ruined it by making you remember the dates.
Right. Like this is important.
What was important was what happened. And if you could somehow inhabit that space, it meant something. But remembering, okay, it's this year and what are the prominent names? That was just rote, right? There's nothing that gravitates or holds to your body
at all. Right. Yeah, totally. The other thing I can remember, U.S. history. I was in like advanced U.S. history, and we simulated the stock market. The teacher was so cool. Like there were 5 stocks, and you had like $100, and we invested buying and selling. And she just had like a video. I mean, not video. What was the thing called? We had the machine projecting
the overhead.
The
overhead
overhead.
projector, the
Transparency.
transparencies. Yeah.
So on the transparency, she would write out what the price was for each one of these stocks each day. You had no idea what the hell.
Did you have grease pencils?
Yeah.
Oh, I love grease pencils.
And like each day, right? And everybody, we didn't
That's
know
before
when.
my time. I only know wet erase.
Excuse me, wet erase, please.
Meta. So speaking meta, we all knew that the great crash of 1929 was coming because that's what we were studying, but we were doing it experiential. And so even though there was all nothing fake money, we were all like in it to win it, right? You know, and like, oh shit, it's happening. It's like, oh, and then the money, then it would go back up, the price would go, oh, okay, no, that wasn't it. We're cool. That's all good. Yeah, I'm gonna buy 30 shares of, you know, the Sears stock, you know, that kind of thing. It was hilarious. And then, yeah, at the end, when it actually did really crash, just watching what, like you were saying, experiencing it, right? Because there's like, I got no money left, you know. there were kids who were just like, damn, right? Don't go to the top of the building. Yeah, it was something.
All 3 of you have spent a little bit of time as a game master, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh? How would you describe that process, and why aren't you more invested in it right now?
Well, I'm just gonna kick off with, so we did these weekly rotations with Rifts. We were playing Rifts. That was the game of my childhood. Not really my childhood. It was more of my high school. And we had no idea how the rules worked. We knew that they were stupid, difficult weapons. We just had stories, and we would have rolls, and if that roll seemed good, we would just go with it. I mean, this is funny because we should have been old enough to actually absorb that, but Rift's rules were so stupid.
They were.
They were so obscure. That being said, we would rotate the puck, and we had one guy who would do adventures that were really hard and fast and very visceral. You had a really interesting, scary type of experience, and it worked against you, and it was actually challenging. And then I would run games, and it was always about some sort of overarching, you know, nefarious thing and mind control and deep characters. There's a character, Chet and Sasha, where these two they're basically brother and sister that we had picked up along the way as we were doing our travels, and both of them we started vying for attention with Sasha. And it's funny because since I created Sasha, she was loosely in my orbit, but I was never my character was a cyber knight and would never be directly assertive. So there was like this whole interplay that happened there, and this other guy would try and get in, and this other guy, he was a vampire, and we were friends, and I don't know exactly how that worked. So all of these, yeah, rifts. And so all of it played out, and we were really just telling stories, but I always had this mind control with, you know, really subversive plot, and it usually took 2 or 3 sessions for them to figure out, oh, Zitikiks are underneath the town, and they have actually hooked into, you know, different members of the town, and were controlling the townspeople. Blah blah blah. You know, it's like, oh, cut that connection, then they moved on. And then the other guy, he would have a little flighty story where he would try and hook up with Sasha, but whatever I put in place actually blocked it, so he could never get her to acquiesce to him. And so that was, he would like try and arrange these things, and they kind of.
So it was the same campaign, and the person who was then GMing, they just controlled their character as an NPC.
As an NPC during that time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, it was, but I always had like really complex subversive plots. One person always had action-oriented plots, and one person, I don't know, I can't remember any of his scenarios other than the fact that he tried to make things happen, and for whatever reason, they could never actually happen. And it was like self-defeating because, he has total control. He can do whatever he wants. But I found it really interesting that I always did these like mind control and deep,
So you had your turn in the mantle, and you like the cerebral aspect of it. What's the thing? Why aren't you a game master right now?
You're better. It's a lot of work.
That is an invalid defense.
That's totally a fair defense. Where am I gonna?
Hey, no, don't call it invalid until you hear everyone's answers.
Fine.
I will say,
having played in your world, I had a fantastic time playing under your tutelage, where you were directing the world, your imagination was unfurled, all that stuff worked out. I had a blast.
It was a kick in the pants. I was being urged off the stage by somebody else who wanted to run his group or run his scenarios. So that was kind of difficult for me because I only got 2, maybe 3 sessions, and that felt bad. I really wanted a little bit more. I had a little more content, although I started getting too complex in my little world building, and I usually get lost in that. So it was probably a good time for it to end, but Tommy and his thing.
Yeah. That's a whole different conversation.
I had a blast, and I was willing to do it again. It's just a lot of work. You do a phenomenal job. You invest very deeply. I'm not as good at investments, personally. Anyway, moving on. Who's next? And close.
What was the question again? Can I get a rephrase, please?
Well, it's really about, you'd invested early on in game mastering. You'd run some sessions. I'm sure there was some reward for that. Why is that not your focus right now?
It's more fun to play.
That's a cool, honest answer. Yeah.
But let's jump back to when you were game mastering. What did you love about it?
No, it's fun to run it. It's fun. The rewarding part is seeing how your players respond to what you're doing. It's fun giving them a challenge and seeing them accomplish it, seeing them discover the reveal or whatever it is you're doing, and see the light bulbs come off, or they get a victory in a hard combat. It's really that's the reward of running a game.
Did you feel adversarial to your players at any point?
Well, yes, I did quite often. I was running for my brothers. So
that's unique, yeah.
And we already have a very competitive, a subtle but competitive relationship. It's mostly dialed back, but in games, it's always allowed to flourish. And for whatever reasons, one of them is very, very competitive in games with me, and every session devolved into an hour-long argument of things.
Maybe not the best environment to be a game master.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But I know you got to go ahead.
Oh, but I mean, I've played in other I've run other groups, and I think the reason why I am not groups that didn't have any of my brothers and groups that have had just some of my brothers. But honestly, it's hard to find a group that actually wants to commit and play on a regular basis. And if you aren't getting a commitment from your players, it feels like you're burning, if you're going to run a 5-hour session, you're probably spending 10 plus 20 hours a week.
Creating.
Well, creating for that. Even if you're running a module, it still takes time to read, to understand, to generate the NPCs you're going to run, draw a map, all that kind of stuff. It still takes whatever time you're going to be running your game. You're taking at least that much time, or double that time, or probably quadruple that time if you're doing it in your own campaign. And if you can't get your players to commit to 5 hours when you're willing to spend 20 for them, what's the point?
Yeah.
That's well said.
So
your background's kind of in the Star Wars area.
Well, yeah. So to get a bit of context, junior high was when I was introduced to, and it was actually by a friend who introduced himself to me, I guess, because we both seemed to have the same sort of like science fiction interests at first. So yeah, Kimball Foster, he was kind of like my mirror universe, like you and Dave. That was like me and Kim. Kimball was like, yeah. So we would do 1-on-1 role-playing game sessions. We'd be on the phone, like consuming the phone, and we would just take turns game mastering. And we enjoyed, I guess you could almost consider some genre to be almost like, what if you were in the real world, but this happened? So yeah, I mean, right? Like almost like a storyline that you could go from, God, what's the popular TV show, Stranger Things or something, right? Or he was very much into superheroes, so then he got the Marvel superheroes game. He was not into Star Wars in terms of like, I don't see why that'd be fun to play like either the same characters who are Star Wars or other minor heroes who exist in that universe. I don't get that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Star Frontiers, because I loved science fiction. So we did a lot of that. And that was really deep role playing because, of course, as the game master, you get the satisfaction of playing just a wide range of characters and types of stories that just whatever your rando inspiration was. And
did space intimidate you as a game master because of the infinite nature of it?
No, it excited me. But what was weird was super heroics, because he wanted me to run a whatever, my own setting of a superhero campaign, could be Marvel or whatever. Because of my lack of knowledge of that world, I felt very intimidated because he was very knowledgeable about it. If that makes sense, right?
You have to take him out of that space so that you can
Yes. So I had to create my own world, which was like, okay, what if like today, but something happened, right? And so later on, then we got more friends, and so we would play different games, and each one of us would take a game that we would run. So I ran Star Wars, the role-playing game, and also Star Trek. I mean, old rule Star Trek. And like Chris, he would run Dungeons and Dragons, and then he would translate into AD&D. Kimball would run Marvel superheroes, and then that translated over later on to Champions, which is like hero system. Anyway, you get the idea. Shadowrun was run by our other friend Sean, but there was about a good crew of 6 of us, and really, like that was like the equivalent of our puck. Each one of us had our own world, right? And then we had players for each other's worlds, and it was more like, hey, what do we want to do this next week? Well, I got an adventure ready for, Star Trek. Cool. All right. I want to play, Commander Cody, the security guy, whatever, right? But that's the way things proceeded all the way really through college. And so I guess to summarize, what was fun was what Mike said. I mean, my greatest reward was seeing like this kind of like creation and maybe an NPC or an interaction take flight, like take life and see where they went with it, see how they enjoyed it, see how they tried to, puzzle something out. That was a lot of fun. My favorite NPC to role play was Admiral Akbar. Just another minute. We need just another minute for the plans to be transmitted, whatever. And I was actually running a Pathfinder game up until about a year ago. I did it for about a year and a half. The reason why, and it was a lot of fun. And the reason why I had to stop was because of players' lives. Like I had one player who literally lost his job at Hill Air Force Base. So off he was going, and then another couple literally just bought their very first house. They already were in like 4 different games, and so they had to sacrifice something because real life was going to take too much, and everybody else was family. So I was the only one outside game. It's like, okay, that's too bad. But I was running Pathfinder, and it was fun. And I think that the reason, to answer the other question, like why don't I do more of that game mastering, is I'm going to steal from Eric, because intentionally, yeah, when I first played my first game with you as the game master, I'm like,
Oh, this is how
oh
it's
my
supposed
god,
to be done.
this is like intimidating. And then honestly, Mike and Ryan, with the rules, right, because of just their nature as players, it's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to handle rules lawyering to that level, right? It'll be like, I don't know if I can handle that. And Star Wars is more of a, for instance, Star Wars is a more loosey storyteller game, rather than being very crunchy like Pathfinder is. So I was like, I have been tempted multiple times to say, wouldn't it be fun if we played a Star Wars game and I would, game master it, but those intimidation factors made me take like 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is Mike and Ryan and Dan were kind of a crucible for me. I had come from an era influenced by my own experience, John, Mark Stockseth, a few other, Rick Phillips, game masters in my past, where you as a game master could kind of step above the rules and create story that disrespected the system you were playing in. And I learned pretty quickly that from this holiday family that every fantasy needs to be grounded in some kind of, we call it lexicon of reality.
Order.
If the rules for the NPCs don't match the rules for the PCs, what the fuck are we doing here? Right? If I can't at first level aspire to do what any of the bad guys do at whatever level they are and achieve that, it's not a balanced world. So I kind of learned that I had to ground my fantasy in something real for it to take heart and become real in my players. And before I met the Holiday Brothers, I was loosey-goosey with that. And I would oftentimes sell the image of fairness and reality and all that stuff in my storytelling, but I was playing by a different rule set than the players in my world. And it wasn't until these guys kind of reminded me that if gravity is the same for everybody, it feels real.
Right.
And from that point to now has been probably the better part of my gaming experience, because it's improv, but it's shared improv. It's not dictatorial, it's democratic.
Yeah. The story you're telling is a cooperative story, and everybody has to be at the table.
And it's shown. Like you've always been a great DM. Like from our first session together, where you were the guest DM, you were better than our current DM at the time. And even when we started Shadow Empire right after that, you were better than every other DM that I've ever played with. But we did have those growing pains of what the fuck's happening here.
So it's
how's he doing that?
It's funny because every time I think about exactly that, Keith had huge story moments, and these story moments, like, the dragon flies overhead and just starts scorching the cities and so forth. Kinestea going up in flames. But you had these moments where one of the players, Dave, would go, point of order. and it's like, I let Keith do his thing up to this point, but at this particular time, I'm taking it back, taking the power back. So it's like, you know, Keith had his fanciful moments, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, this is the thing that I do, and I do it well, and you can't do the thing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like loosey goosey up to that point, and then it starts to concrete, and then suddenly Dave goes, I've got something here.
Well, and to build on what Keith, started on earlier, us holiday boys where we were playing tactical Dungeons and Dragons. We were playing a miniatures game with story in between originally. And it was fun. I'm not gonna lie, like,
yeah,
it's still a fun way to play the game. It's just a different way to play the game.
Yeah.
And I think I know all of us have come a long ways since then. I mean, I think I've made more effort to come that way. And there are times where you don't, if you're having a good role-playing moment, you don't need the rules. We kind of had one on Thursday, actually. I was coming up on the rush in the I don't even know what to call it. Well, no, we were in the ship at the time. We hadn't explored any of the crates. So we were in this ship, and I found this Russian drew on me and fired as I was walking past him in the engine room. And I called out to him in Buryat, and then I moved up to him and put my sawed-off rev jack under his chin and asked him to drop his gun. Of course, there's no mechanic to that or anything like that, but it's the story moment takes priority there because it's not critical for the rules to reign there. So that's there's give and take, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is the rules are important and they ground us all in the same system, but there are times where you have to flex them.
Yeah,
I think another good example of that is back in Shadow Empire, and I think this is one of the reasons why you wanted to drop 3rd edition 3.5 is the grapple mechanics with that dragon and the giant in the tower. because of the way the mechanics were, you literally could not, as a giant, go and pick somebody up. Same with the dragon. You couldn't grab somebody with the tail through the door. The mechanics did not support it, even though
it would make sense.
It would make so much sense for something like that to happen.
Every other reason in a logical head would say it's possible, but for the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Frustration.
See, and as soon as you describe that scenario of you going up and putting the rev jack under that guy's chin, it's like I would say, okay, that's a 2-hit and a held action or a
ready to
action. And it's
well,
like,
I think I actually readied an action to shoot him.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's more just the flavor of I move up real close and personal and put it right underneath his chin.
Yeah,
right.
It's the difference between putting 2 miniatures side by side and talking about a moment.
Yeah.
And that moment was far more dangerous than 2 5-foot squares.
Yeah,
right. 2 5-foot squares, and 1d8 plus 4 damage.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love because it also fits exactly into the aesthetic that we're going for. This real and gritty, and it's like, first off, gunplay isn't the answer, not necessarily, but I'll use it. I love that.
Yeah, that's I'll threaten violence, but I always want to give them an out.
Right.
Before I pull that trigger. Unfortunately, he shot on me, and then I blew his head off.
Both barrels at once?
That was the first time I hit with both barrels.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't think it killed him. I think it got close, and then I think either Ursula or Axel finished him off.
Then finished.
And then he turned into water. So... Mystery.
I'm getting ice.
Okay. Oh, man, you see, you guys have actually gotten to the point where you're stepping into the weird and the alien and so forth. And we've been playing in John's world so many times and so often that we haven't gotten to explore the Keith stuff, like the Middle Welkin. That, I mean, we got a taste of that back in the day, but it has been so long since Banny has actually been able to explore Middle Welkin or the Middle Welkin and all the nefarious trappings that go around it. I really want to get back to that investigation stuff.
John Does Great is kind of like the one-off side adventures. They're really entertaining. Like they're entertaining, but
they're not.
But they don't have
not necessarily.
They don't have the reveals that Keith bakes into his adventures.
Yeah. I mean, they are in Keith's world, but they are
don't have the reveal. They don't have the. Every time Keith runs an adventure, it's something new. It's atmosphere. He's revealing something of his world every time he runs an adventure. Yeah. It's like, okay, I've shown you this, but there's this.
Well,
and this. And this.
No pressure, Keith.
2 traveling Rincani that are moving across, the country and have, pop their heads up and then disappear, and then pop their heads up and disappear. It's like, I'm never going to actually have an encounter with them. Never
say never.
Yeah. Anyway, so next adventure. I was kidding.
Well, I love the dialogue. Because I think everybody does this for different reasons to the same end. A little bit of wanting to get out of your head, a little bit of wanting to get out of our current reality. I really appreciate the time everybody spends. I appreciate it most from Keith, though, because he's the one who does spend hours and hours and hours and has spent hours and hours on this. I love that eye roll. That's perfect.
I think we should ask Laura how many hours he spends.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Keith. You're muted. Still muted.
She would tell you every waking moment.
Wow.
It's like he's driving and he goes, "Oh, look at that." It's like, no. Whatever's going through your head right now, I know you're just taking that and you're going to shove it into a different world, and you're going
the man who is married to Burgundia.
Well, here's how bad it is, right? Because Laura and I have been wanting to go back to France for a number of years. We were scheduled to go, and then COVID hit and kind of shut everything down.
Same here.
And now that I'm like writing adventures over there in this whole Saint Malo thing, I'm like, Laura, how would you feel about going to Saint Malo? We'll spend a week there or something like that. And it's totally me on a fact-finding mission for adventure writing.
Yeah. It's like,
it's a business expense.
I'm going to write this off. It is really nice. I actually pulled it up and I was looking at it. It's the one with the fort on the end, right?
Yeah. I mean, that little fortification is the most badass, dense number of blocks for 100 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's like these peaked, very medieval looking buildings, but they're all stone.
Yeah. Well, the city in Lord of the Rings, what's the city that's kind of built stacked and stacked and stacked?
Helm's Deep.
No, that's
you're
talking about the
one with the tree on top.
Yeah.
There's a tree on top? Ilsgard? I mean, Isengard? No. This isn't where Rohan.
It's not Rohan. It's Minas Ithil.
They had to ride up
Minas Tirith,
switchbacks to get all the way to the top. So that city was inspired by Saint Malo. So I mean, it's got these kind of tight quarters where the streets are narrow. I mean, picture every street in that city is probably 30 feet wide with a 5 or 6 story building. So it's very kind of segmented and siloed. And then you've got these curtain walls that surround the whole thing that prevent you from actually seeing the beautiful sea just outside, right? You've got these little alcove archways that you can walk through and then emerge onto this pristine, beautiful beach, and the tides vary so much between low tide and high tide. The two islands that are just outside of that, at one part of the day, you could walk out to there on a little land bridge and get out to those ruins or those castles. But when the tide comes in, you're stranded.
Oh, the Petite Bay and the Grand Bay.
Yeah.
And Fort National. I'm looking at it. I've actually got it streaming on the map, but it won't show up in a place that anybody can see it for a while now. But yeah, some Saint Malo.
So Saint Malo is like, the pointy end of a spear before trying to advance to Great Britain.
Yeah, if you want to go, if you want to cross the channel, that's a pretty good spot. And what's funny is the history of this place is just filled with French pirates. I mean, it's the Caribbean reinvented in the European theater.
Or maybe the Caribbean was the reinvented Saint Malo.
Crossover.
Bum, bum, bum.
I don't care which way it bleeds. I just love that there's a story there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful and crazy. Pirates ahoy!
Oh, that's fun.
And so for that reason, I needed them to be an independent state, not under the direct supervision of the princess or the queen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of a city-state that exists inside of a country
with a polyglot of languages and trade and other nefarious things, because you've got a triangle. It's perfect for we're not under anybody's jurisdiction.
Yeah, they're historically Colombian, right? That was originally, or at least far enough back that it matters. Most of the people there probably speak Gallic, but they've learned
other languages.
The conquering languages.
It's really interesting because as I look at this, I still think Puerto Rico and the Port of San Juan, so much better design for resisting attack. Even though this is it's really robust. Any people on the shore would be stuck on the shore except for certain paths, but they had so many ways for you to get into the castle area, so they could just mow you down.
Puerto Rico's insane. Yeah.
The designer who put that fort together, I was like, he was a Dutch guy who was hired by the Spaniards to do it. As far as I know, I think that's how it went out. But he was a foreign national who worked with the Spaniards to build the fort. And the design of it was phenomenal. And this does remind me of those little design elements where it's like, okay, here are the channels, and you would channel people into this place, and then you would just take them out. But the way that all the angles and the slants and so forth, so they always had a protected shot if you were shooting from the fortress.
Well, those are back in the Star Fortress. I mean, the Star Fortresses exceeded the designs that are in Saint Malo, because Saint Malo is very medieval.
Yeah, very early.
There's no cannon defenses for anything here.
Yeah, there was it was beyond or before. It was definitely foot traffic and so forth. But
there are photos of this area, World War II, where American bombers, Grand Bay or B, I don't know how it's pronounced in French. That first big island as you step away from the castle area, it shows that as a smoldering, bombed out ruin. I don't know what was there, but
maybe
not much is there anymore.
Throw the shit out of it.
Yeah, it is very. There's very little on that island anymore, and you can tell that it was bombed to oblivion.
I'll bet you if you went in and put Saint Malo, World War II, you would get that photo of that smoking. It's a photograph from one of the bombers that was flying overhead, just showing it the whole thing smoldering.
Grand Bay.
This is Keith trying to be John in the let's research the history of this crap.
Yeah.
Right.
But you end up leveraging that and then expounding on it in a way that that makes it so it's not a concrete story, but it's a flavor to the environment.
It's
and
a sandbox, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just being
I've,
able to
I've told you guys about the Foot Locker, John's Foot Locker story, right?
What's that?
So
I've
start
heard
telling
of
us.
this would be 1980, 82, 83. John and I'd known about John for at least a year before I met him. And then somehow in our friends group, we got connected to each other, and I went over to visit him at his house. He lived about 2 miles from where I did, rode my bike over, went down into his basement where his bedroom was and into his bedroom. And he had one of those crappy little Foot Locker things. It looks like a pirate's chest. It's got this shiny lacquer sides. It was just crap, right? But he opens it up, and we'd been playing dungeon modules forever, where everybody graph paper was the most coveted substance in the world, right?
Mm.
If you had a big sheet of graph paper and you could make rooms and put numbers on it, you were the king of dungeon mastery. So I get over to John's house, and I had been living in this world for 2 years, and John pulls out a map that he drew himself of a world that wasn't anything I'd seen. And he was talking stories about, this is this is that, these are these countries, these are these influence. And he blew my mind that day when he opened that stupid Foot Locker at the base of his bed with all of his Dungeons and Dragons campaign notes in there.
Creation, yeah.
And it immediately moved me from creating dungeons to creating worlds.
Mm.
And we've been in an arms race since, we'll call it 1982, to see who can make the best and most compelling worlds.
So you're saying he drew First Blood, and
I mean, John has always been a master storyteller, and we all know that reading his books, he has finished that journey further than any of us will ever go.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
His Achilles' heel was sharing the story.
Hmm.
Oh,
we were pawns in a world of knights and bishops and kings, and we never really owned the story. We shared moments within his imagination. And it was awesome. It was some of the best gaming of my life, but we never quite felt like we were anything more than a tail on the dog. We didn't wag the dog.
Right. You would never become Winston Churchill or some mover or shaker of the world. Right. Yeah.
Unless it fit into the narrative John had already outlined for us. Right.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful railroad you could ever ride. It's probably, I think there's a railroad in Thailand that's like for the king, and it's like beautiful the entire run. Going through one of John's adventures was always this beautiful railroad track.
I just want you to know, we all recognize this because we're along for the ride, but it's Blanca who runs the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is funny to hear that, because it is, I mean, Keith he's writing the stories for you. These are love letters to you in a sense, because Blanca being such an important character, that's why you're team lead. That's why you end up calling these shots, and we're participants. We're supporting characters for your character. If you didn't feel like that, because
I totally feel that, and it's a great honor that John has bestowed upon me to not try to kill me every time he gets a chance.
And you're dead.
Well,
back in the day, it was more adversarial. Now it's more collaborative. And I think we both respect each other's way of storytelling, and I relish every opportunity as a player to inhabit his imagination, but the honor of him exploding his imagination inside my construct feels very. It's complimentary. It strokes the ego. I mean, John's letting go his imagination inside my world. I can't ask for a better partner.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, here is this published author who sees my world as fun
like this
enough
is
for him.
Yeah.
He's
Here's a fun world to play in. Yeah.
He's robbing many thousands of readers from the next version of his zombie world because he's having so much fun telling stories in this construct.
Yeah.
I am humbled.
And stoked. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, any of you could step into this forefront and bestow the same honor because you guys respect the source material, you respect your characters, and you treat this stuff with a reverence that it barely deserves.
No, it
I don't know
deserves
about that.
Like we said, or like I was saying, it's like, oh, it's a Keith Haney production. Hold on, I gotta check the history. Wait, hold on. I don't want to F this up.
As long as we're pushing ourselves to make these moments special, to me, the currency of role playing is vulnerability, and I appreciate everybody's vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I need to shed Banny at some point though, because his vulnerability
you said that
is
for
starting
a year now.
to settle in really deep.
We might need to refresh who we inhabit. I mean, it gets wearisome to put on the same old rain cloak. I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Cornell, but I still feel like I'm inhabiting somebody else's construct.
Yeah.
With Cornell.
I don't mind that I'm inhabiting Banny, which is another construct. It's not exactly mine.
I mean, well, yeah, but you've been playing him
I-
long enough that he's
yeah.
yours, and I'm sure I could get that way with Cornell. And I'm not saying I'm uncomfortable running Cornell or anything, but it is different when it's
it is
when you built it from the ground up.
He was an NPC
right.
for a very long time. He was an NPC.
It's funny because everybody here is invested in their characters, and watching that overlap, all that kind of silly play that we have that adds up to a little bit more than the math.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I walk away from game night and I'm reflecting back on the previous nights or week's adventure, it's not what we accomplished, it's what we revealed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like it was the Sasquatch encounter, the survival, but then mostly I was thinking, how does Robin feel about having had the thrill of stealing from this guy, and what does that mean? What does she want to do now? And that's what I wrote to John, was that she's made up her mind and she wants to wake up an hour early, and we'll play it. But I mean, like, she wants to, how much lira? 3,000. Oh, okay. It's going to make her feel a little bad. But anyways, she wants to give that back because that's kind of who she is. She did it for the thrill of doing it. After the experience was over, it's like, that was very exciting, but I don't really want to have robbed this person who's not even Clovian.
Well,
anyway, that's what I mean. I'm just saying that's the inhabiting of the character. You think about like that occupation and like that reality, and you're like, oh, that's fun.
Right, but to comment on what like Keith was saying is what did you reveal? And I think to like Eric's credit, his handling of the two echelon agents is a perfect example of that.
Right.
That is Bonnie being uncomfortable drawing down on two echelon agents, even if even if they might be new echelon agents, they
Don't know
Bonnie's like, I'd rather risk getting shot in the back than fight these guys right now. This film is too precious. I have to try and get it out of here.
Along with my own precious blood.
I let Cornell take hits. I didn't try to be offensive in that whole situation against the Yetis. Yes, it's like this is but yeah, it's just like I'm not gonna do this right now. I'm the fuck out of here. It was hilarious, and it's a good thing that Banny didn't know anything about your encounter with that guy, Robin, because he would have
I don't
had
think
words.
any of us are clued in on
nobody
90% of that
nobody.
situation. So share that situation.
If you do share that situation,
Yeah,
it's none of your business.
It would be none of my business, and it's a good thing because it's very similar to how I treated Norm when Keith's brother, when he was playing what's the guy's name?
Adam Case.
Adam.
He was Cornell.
Oh, I thought he was Adam.
No, he played Adam.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Adam.
I played Cornell.
Yeah, Ken played Cornell. But but just that whole, you're not a thug, you're not a thief. What are you doing?
I think it might be good. Don't bottle up Robin's feelings and just share them with the GM. Share them with not only the other players but the other characters.
Yeah. So I mean,
maybe have a conversation with Bonnie about this 3,000 lira you just came into. Have a conversation with Blanca.
Yeah, and so we'll see whenever we get to play next how she's going to be enacting it. But inside, she's actually really ashamed about it. That's why it hasn't come out. But
and that's good and all, but share.
Yeah, so it was actually almost a impetuous teenage after the experience of like flipping almost dying of being desired by this kind of like Hitler Youth guy, that then she was able to get out some of her physical and wanting, right? So at first it was to check out what's the ID, right? I mean, like, is this guy actually in the up and up? But then like she just made this impulsive decision, which was very chaotic of her, of just saying, I'm going to pocket the money. And then she fucked him.
That's like, I'm not a whore. I don't take money for this.
He paid up front, right? He paid up front for those services.
And steal. And frankly, this goes back to like she survived on the streets of Gunth doing things. Of course, we know that, even if we don't acknowledge it, that's part of her past. But she is now, well paid by her occupation. So this was literally a surrender of her baser instincts and going back to kind of like a thrill of doing something that she wasn't supposed to. And so now when it was after the fact and she put the rope back in place and the chair went back outside of the storage room and whatever, now it was like, the grown-up woman talking to the id saying, what did you just let yourself do? So it was a vulnerable release of her inhibitions that kind of just allowed to happen, because we had nothing that we kind of like had an obstruction, and we drank and she wanted to get some.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of that. Like, but if your character is feeling a strong emotion, share it.
Yeah. So
I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah. And I don't know if you'll see it per se, but yeah, so she felt really then guilty. And so she's going to wake up an hour earlier with the thought of, I need to clean this, right? Because
play it out for us, Ken. Don't tell us how it goes. Play it out for us.
I don't know. How it goes depends also on Game Master.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is don't spoil it for us.
Yeah.
Play it out for us next week.
Absolutely.
And John's pretty good about, especially early on in the evening, kind of letting us dictate what story we want to tell.
Yeah.
So take that moment next session and share with us what she's going through. Because Robin's been tight-lipped from the very beginning. and she's shared more and more with Blanca because they're roommates. But a lot of that is implied, and you and I are just kind of doing the improv part of, what it's like for two women, what, 6 years apart,
27 to 17, 10.
10 years apart, sharing an apartment, especially with Robin being the senior, but Blanca holding the power.
Being the, yeah.
It's her room,
Mhm.
letting Robin. And these positions have to be like being tossed in a dryer for Robin.
That's why it's always like, I cook for you. What do you want?
Yeah, and Blanca's overtly egotistical high ground has got to be wearing on Robin, right? I mean, Blanca comes with confidence and direction, but she's also condescending without knowing it.
Right. And I mean, really, as a survivor, besides being annoying, of course, but Robin also sees that of herself from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because after the orphanage was like the streets. So, yeah, but she doesn't know what suffering is. This little, mage who's had this great life. She doesn't even know what hardship is.
Yeah, if you watch the what's the yellow line in The Biggest Loser, she doesn't know what a yellow line is. being cut from a group because you're not worthy is not even in her imagination.
No, never. Right. Yeah.
And running her in that way and having legitimate respect for people feels like a dichotomy.
Because you are so, just naturally
she's so full of herself. She doesn't fear the things that should normally scare you until they actually bite her in the ass. But that's happened so seldom that she's still this youthful idiot.
She's still alive, considering
there's not enough scar tissue.
Not a
there's
pilot.
Just not enough scar tissue.
Oh, there's actually. I look at her sheet and all the wounds that she's acquired. She's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, her legs are shredded. Yeah. She's got scars up and down her legs. She wears
stockings to hide the scars, right? So, but yeah, the dynamic between her and Robin is an interesting one, where the older sister is a really older sister to a savant, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like, what would it be like to be the big brother to Mozart?
Yeah. You're like, hey, I'm your big brother. Well, can you do this? Well, no, but I
can. Well, shut up then. Yeah. Well, the other thing too, and I don't know if again, I've been role playing Robin as she's never going to put herself out there to be in the lead, not just because she's kind of the loner archetype, but because she is just a woman, right? And this is a bit more feminist of a environment, but it is still the 1930s.
1930s, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why the reason why Blanca leads is because she effing knows about we're gonna do this magic arcana thing. I actually have these talents. I know what should be done. But the fact that you don't have the temperance is why Banny is invaluable, certainly, and hopefully Robin has some value too in temperance.
That was the beauty of the early era, where Banny, he's a mature man. He's had lots of life experience. He's tempered. He's measured. All these things, and he's trusted by Angelica because he's led so many missions without major fuck-ups.
Yeah, major incidents, even though.
And so it's easy to go to Banny and go, Banny, you're leading the mission. I trust you. You're going to take care of the people. You're going to bring back everybody who goes out on the mission with you, blah, 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 blah. But there was that point, I think it was when John was running, that we kind of flipped it, where we had 2 sessions where we were playing pretty deep into the mother-daughter
dynamic, yeah.
And I thought John handled that really well, helping navigate that. And
after Bathory
was the turning point.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely feel like Lady Bathory was the turning point, and I really just need to finish that story. I need to write that and get it out, because that needs to be experienced by somebody other than us, because it feels like it's so trapped up here. But that last jaunt through the castle and getting
Horrors
into the
below.
dungeons itself, and then the bath itself, and the fact that we killed the person we were there to save, but she probably would have been broken beyond belief anyway, so it wasn't worth having it's like all of
John
these
says he's
things.
writing.
What's that?
John says he's writing that novel. He's writing that novel.
Okay.
Bathory?
So the whole Bathory uh, module or adventure, he's working on that as a module.
Okay.
I've
Oh, okay.
actually got it slated. I don't have a bladder for it. It's probably B7. It's a 5th to 6th level adventure,
Mm-hmm. That's
but
cool.
we'll see where it ends up, because to me that became one of the major experiences of this world.
Yeah.
And it was certainly the closest ever we were to the Kurg Union at that time ever.
Well, yeah, being in it and
Mhm.
having the uncomfortable balance of the revolutionaries and the uh yeah, and the fact that the Kurgs had such control over the
Yeah.
area. And so it's like there's the police, there's revolutionaries, and there's the actual KU soldiers. And they were brutal, but we didn't run into them so much as we ran into the police. And we did have that moment where we're basically coming back after being brutalized. We were shredded, and this is after Hotel Budapest, and I was helping Cornell out, and big old truck pulls up behind us, and Blanca had put an illusion over the vehicle so it looked intact, but it's like bumper was all scuffed and gunshots and all this other stuff. It was in bad shape, and they stop us and they're like, "Yeah, oh, we're just heading home, going to the hotel." And it's like, "Okay, there's a lot of activity out on the streets tonight, so get to your hotels quickly." And it's like, "Okay." And so we did. But it's like I had bullet holes in me. I was bleeding. Oh, well, stab wounds like crazy, and I was in bad shape. And it's like wearing black shirts tends to work pretty well in that situation. But yeah, it was at night, and I mean he spotlighted our faces, and I'm sure, oh, it was bad.
This is
And then we
before Cornell had the scalpel.
he got it from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. So is he talking about doing the entire thing, including Chevalier,
Well,
with the
he says a
Hotel
lot of
Budapest?
that was tailored. Again, he's catering to Blanca, right? Catering
Yeah.
to
Right.
Keith.
Putting her in
So
situations of immense, yeah,
yeah. Well, and
luxury.
I consider it the highest compliment that he thinks that dropping the hook for Blanca is the way to start a mission. I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you.
I mean, it's a hook. I mean, like
Anytime you're the focus of a hook,
yeah,
that's a huge compliment.
exactly. Any one of us who could be given a story hook to say, play with this, run with this, would be like, oh, this is awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take that lightly. And what's funny is, I've known John since I was in 10th grade, and we've run very divergent lives and kind of ended our careers in different places. We remained friends the whole time, but there's this weird kind of respect, because John went from being my friend to being a published author.
Right.
I mean, it's a silly kind of distinction, but it's a tier in our society that is really,
It's a achievement.
It's an
Absolutely.
achievement. Yeah.
you go to Wikipedia, type in John L. Campbell, and there's a page, right? That's awesome. And to me, that's kind of the Charlie Sheen thing, winning.
Winning.
John wouldn't say that of himself, right? I mean, he's had great accolades as a writer, but it has not enriched him where he can even leave his day job, right? So here's somebody who's a published author, book tour circuits, great accolades, but still has to hold down his day job.
Right.
And that's a healthy reminder that, our hobbies are not necessarily something that pays our bills.
Yep.
No matter how much we covet that. This whole Burgundy experiment is it's fun. I recognize that it's not likely to blow up and become anything beyond just kind of this tribal thing that we share.
We just haven't found the right, target niche. Boom.
No,
we're doing a niche inside of a niche. So it's like,
no,
this is
but
definitely
it's so
long
cool.
tail. It's super cool, but it is also really, it's hard to bottle Keith up and turn. It's like the essence de la Keith, just dab it. You want
the books come close, but it's just like this is this little piece of it. Yeah.
But it's like if you could put a head with Keith's brain in it that's been mirrored or whatever else, and you just set it there, and it's like, okay, now let's do these. Yeah, see the automaton
Arigato, Mr. Roboto.
But that's the thing, it's not robotic, it's not generated in this weird way. I mean, I go back to the whole thing where you were talking with Bjorn, and Bjorn's like, I need to. The windshield wipers are weird, and you went in and talked to. Was it Elias or was it?
No, you were just at
Isaac.
a roadside gas station before.
It was a roadside gas station. Yeah, and he goes up and says, I need to fix these windshield wipers. They're driving me crazy. And the guy's like, was it the guy? Yeah, the factory recall. It's like
you need 2 washers instead of 1 to take the squeak out, right?
And so it's like he talks to the guy at the gas station, and this whole moment happens where I'm like, what the fuck am I just looking at? I mean, I've got chills right now just thinking about it. But so Keith rips this thing out and says, factory recall, 2 washers, this, that, put it on here. It works, splendidly, like gives him the extra washer, and it takes like 5 minutes to put this thing together, and suddenly the windshield wipers are just smooth as can be.
And this quirk that John had invented for his cab, right? He's like, his windshield wiper, he invented the idea that it doesn't always work and it sometimes hangs up. So when he pulls into this gas station and this attendant has the fix for that, it just moved everything forward. You're like, this is gonna be a good fucking night.
Yeah. It was brilliant. And I just watched Keith flow into that spot and just nail it. Absolutely nail it, because it was Bjorn who said, hey, have you heard anything about this? Or maybe he showed it to him or something along those lines. But there was a communication there, and the guy was like, 20 or something. You must have nailed it. Bam. And I was like, this is how it works. And he just did it, and it was so smooth and so elegant. And I just, it literally, I mean, I got chills again, but it's just, it gave me chills in that moment. I was like, this is why it's really hard for other game masters to ever emulate what you have in your head and your capacity for being the improv guy and for being an actor, and to pull all of that information and it bubbles up at just the right time. It's fucking magical is really what it is.
The thing that kind of comes to mind in that is, and I bring this up in the game mastering section of the book, talking about bringing your own experience to the moment, right? And in there I talk about, not everybody's ridden a motorcycle and crashed it, but most people have ridden a bicycle and crashed it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of take that experience,
extrapolate,
grow it up, right? So
you get close enough.
If you've got this movie chase scenario and somebody's in a car and somebody's on a motorcycle, and you go into a narrow alley and there's a garbage can that's sticking a little too far out, and you blow your drive roll or whatever that piloting check is, and everybody's caught their handlebar on like a fence post or something, and we're just like, oh, damn it, this is unrecoverable. And you're going to ride out those next few minutes in humility.
Few seconds to minutes, I guess.
Yeah. Like, tumble, stand up and go, but recounting that, I mean, grabbing that moment and recasting it with somebody else's character. Like, so we had that chase scene in the very first mission, Wish Hunt, where you guys were racing through streets trying to shake your tail, and you went to that narrow alley where you had garbage cans and bicycles that made it too tight to really get through, and it was a die roll whether you were going to make it or not. You guys just knifed through barely, but the pursuers hit the bicycles.
Yeah, caught the bicycle and it dragged him into more bicycles, and so like just a big old mess, and it like took him into the window of a shop. Yeah. But the thing is,
over.
But that was the thing that was crazy. It's like we have to amp up the difficulty for ourselves in order to amp up the difficulty for them, and it was this who's going to screw it up.
Was built on that idea that you can risk as much as you want. And the higher you risk, the higher the risk for the people pursuing you. So you choose how hard it is for them to follow you.
Oh man!
And you guys kept bumping up the scale until they failed their role.
And that whole time, it's like I could, shoot out the back window, but it's pointless. It's actually pointless because, first off, we're swaying all over the place and it's just a big old mess. But they're far enough away. It's like just staying within sight lines. And it was entirely up to Bjorn to make it happen. And he would ratchet it up just a little bit, and it's like, oh, we're going down the sidewalk and we're dodging umbrellas now.
The street, now we're chasing pedestrians off the sidewalk.
Go! Yeah, it was just this building tension with that, because it's like at any point in time somebody's going to blow a roll, and we're just waiting. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be us or is it going to be them? And that was because it was the hammer and the fleur or le fleur. Yep. And both of them are super dangerous, and they would clock us in major nasty ways. And I don't think we could have survived.
You kept Fleur from casting any kind of magic at you because you were staying one turn ahead every time. Because you knew if you could maintain line of sight, she was going to throw some shitty ass spell at you.
Yeah, and she already tried at first, which confused Bjorn. And Bjorn's like, "What was that?" Because he felt it trickle off of him, and he thought it was Monica.
Yeah.
And so it's like at the end of that, we're driving down the street and he pulls over to the side, and we have a moment where I think, oh no, he's going to kill her. And I'm like, he's not going to, because the goal of the mission was to save her. So, and he does not like magic users. So he's going to, and so I'm just watching it as it plays out, because like, you don't mess around with magic and I just kind of watched it happen, and I said, just let it absorb that, understand it, and deal with it, because we're just going to move on. And
to this day, John still hates that image of Monica. Every time he says he looks at that, he's like, that smug little smirk on her face, I just want to deck her.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's funny. That scenario, Banny learned a whole lot about Bjorn in that scenario, like magic. And the fact is, he's gone a little soft on the magic side since he has this proximity with Blanca. But he still says he talks a big game. Anti-magic.
Yeah. He talks a game, but he doesn't walk it.
No, but it's because he's had a very close role model of sorts that has shown otherwise.
Very, very unlikely pairing for sure.
You also have a Loop Guru girlfriend, Calderari. Just throwing that out there too.
Oh, and I have actually thrown it in his face. You're not much more than a werewolf. You're just a werebear or something. And he's like, no, it's nothing like that. It's like, no, it's really close, really close. I don't know what your history looks like, and yes, sure, Odin's involved, but I wouldn't be surprised if Largatha just shows up one day and goes, rah!
Yeah. Well, John plays it as a curse versus a blessing.
Yeah. And well, a blessing versus a curse, right? I mean, it's a blessing for him by Odin, and then when it's a Loop Guru, it's like that's a curse. It's a curse. You know those Calderari.
That's the evil curse. We got to get rid of that.
Nope, we just kill it. We do not get. That's how you get rid of a curse like that.
Right. Yeah, that's how you get rid of it.
Chop its head off and you bury it and you say it's good, or whatever.
And don't forget to burn it.
Burn it to the ground. Get the Flammenwerfer out and.
Pretty much.
Oh, what other big
the
toys?
amount of time I try to keep the armory in the realm of real weapons.
I know.
Well, it's like technically it's a real weapon.
I'm glad that the Flammenwerfer has taken the background to the Yeti.
Oh well, at least
it's less area of effect.
I will say that Yeti has been used to great effectiveness multiple times in situations where it's like, no. I like that you actually had a defense for the hammer, though, so that he could survive 2 shots from it.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. 2 shots from it. And, God, that stupid vest. Those vests. There's got to be a way to... You know what? It's time. I think it's time to go to bed. I'm looking at the time, and I'm feeling... the time.
A little bit tired.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got that Wednesday morning meeting, you know.
Constant.
Wednesday morning.
Actually, no. I do have. We changed that meeting. It's now a little later on Tuesdays, which is lovely. But VMworld, my business, that whole event.
No, but I think you're on track. We have
bless you
certainly run the gambit of conversations.
Wow. Yeah, it's true.
So next week, I was just given the heads up that from like 6 till I don't know how long those concerts. They'll start at 7. Probably it's an hour and a half or so. I won't be back home until about 9. Wow. I can jump on then.
We'll see if Robin's still alive.
I'm sure there's going to be a fair amount of hotel time and some setup time. So Robin, even if she's 3 hours late, probably won't miss the meat of the action.
We'll see. Yeah. And I guess I can try to email John what my out of anyone else's, in theory, interaction would be for an action. He can make a ruling about what happens with that, since that, in theory, is an hour before anybody else.
Yeah. He's done a pretty good job of playing Robin when you were either late or absent. So
yeah, I was trapped in a room. I remember that. Can't open the imaginary door.
I don't know what happened there. That was weird.
That was weird. Super weird.
Yeah, very strange, bitch.
Bitch.
Just be glad that you remind her of herself in her persnickety years.
Yeah. Robin could put a hole in Blanca without much effort.
As if she could get a chance with like lightning streaming through her body.
Yeah.
It depends.
It depends.
Robin's one good roll from exterminating a tiny little redhead.
Sure. We'll keep saying that to ourselves. Your armor class is pretty darn good for a mage.
Well, the beauty of this world is everybody's equal in the defense department.
Pretty close. I mean, outside of a few like 1 or 2 bumps up with armor and so forth. I don't wear armor.
Most people don't.
I am definitely going to be having a Derringer under my pillow at all times from here on out, though.
Sorry, Benny.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I hope you have some good memories to go with the bad ones.
It was comfortable until I was stabbed.
We just need to make sure we have our conversation with Blanca about not trying to hook up anybody in the party. Just saying.
Like I said,
I'm a terrible matchmaker.
It was a setup from
Yeah.
the beginning, and she knew my room. She knew that there was this little going on, and I was isolated. So,
but she didn't know how isolated you were until anyway.
She did.
We set up. She would have showed up either way.
I think she would have.
I
think she would have, because I set up you guys in a room and you guys in a room.
True.
So Bjorn and Cornell were in a room because Benny was like, I know how that sounds, and it's not pleasant.
But I mean, that could have been a diversion.
Sounds like hubris.
Yeah, well, it was hubris. I was like, yeah, I'm totally going to stay in my own room. And because I did that once before on another mission, but because I was allowed to set up the rooms, I did it the way I wanted to.
But
so I totally...
The last time you were in a room alone, you were also...
accosted.
Yeah.
And subject to a creature more powerful than you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Pleasantly so.
I think that Bjorn and now Robin from last session are the only ones who've been able to just safely have a late night liaison.
Conjugal visits?
Yeah, a safe conjugal visit. I mean, I think everyone else is in recent history.
Because both Cornell and Blanca had a good week.
Yeah.
After that return flight home from...
Was it just a week?
Well, probably 2 weeks.
Okay, that's more what I was thinking, yeah.
They had a honeymoon.
Oh yeah, but you're too PC. I'm talking about with the outside world.
The what?
I'm talking about with the outside world, not with like two PCs together. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were not protected
by PCs.
Yeah, they weren't in a protected scenario though.
Right.
True. Yeah, it wasn't like part of a storyline.
But you were inside Burgundia borders, and they were. I mean, clearly they were safe from harm.
We're still in Burgundia borders, and all things considered. I'm just like, we're gonna be racking up a body count in this place very soon, and I was thinking it would be better to just go a hunting than to just let them sit there and throw themselves at us.
That's what Robin just said.
Yeah,
yes.
But draw them out into the wilderness.
Draw them into the into our space. Create a layer for them so they have to come to our stuff.
We can use Banny as bait again.
So why not draw them out of the city instead of trying to shoot them in the middle of the hotel?
But not shooting. That's why it is basically very similar to the just blanket party. Come over, we'll have a blanket party for you, and we'll use soap and a sock and.
I need to go back and watch that movie. What's the Eiger Sanction? I think that was
Eiger Sanction.
It was a mountaineering movie. Eiger Sanction.
Eiger Sanction. 1975
with Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood.
Yep.
Wow.
I can't believe that manifested from whatever deep barrels of coagulated thought.
What is going on? That is nuts. Is
he going to drop kick somebody on the side of the mountain? I see this trailer.
Clint Eastwood and David Bowie.
He has aged so well.
Yes.
Well, basically, he was always old and he never changed.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he's always
like Steve Martin, right? He had white hair when he started, so he doesn't look any older.
What is this movie about?
I don't think I ever saw the movie. I remember the advertisements. What year did they say it was?
75.
Yeah,
I
so
was 2 years old.
10-year-old Keith is like, what the hell is this movie?
It looks like it wants to be a spy thriller, mountaineering adventure.
But he's
That's
an art
that's
history.
exactly what the synopsis sounds like. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I
But
was
he's an
looking
art
for
history
a synopsis.
professor.
This belongs in a museum. Oh, wait, this is something else.
Yeah, it's an art history professor, mountain climber, and former assassin.
Ooh, just drop that in there.
Just like Danny.
I was with you until former assassin.
former assassin. I found a way to hide my dealings. Yeah,
My killing.
Yeah, it looks like he gets blackmailed into doing one last sanction.
The Iger one. Apparently.
I remember Iger. I mean, Iger, I think is a. It's not a German word. Well, it's probably a German word, but it seems like it's a Swiss German.
It's a mountain of the Bernese Alps.
Oh, okay.
Overlooking Grindelwald and Lauterbrunnen in the Bernese Oberland of Switzerland.
Got it. It is a Swiss mountain then.
Wait, I'm very confused. Why does this make you think of where we are?
Well,
mountain
It's the
climbing,
Alps.
assassins,
Mountain climbing.
Alps.
Swiss Alps, yeah.
We said we weren't going to mountain climb.
No, that's fine. But we're there. We might as well get a good look
We're
at
gonna
it.
draw the echelon agents into a mountain climbing competition, and
we're going mountain climbing because it's fashionable and because we're dressed for it.
Yeah, that's right. We're dressed like a rainbow.
The choice not to get dressed for it.
We've got a giant lemon drop that we call Bjorn.
I will take. I will carry you.
Drop.
I will carry you wherever. Yes.
Music by John Williams, though. I noticed that.
There is. That's interesting. That makes it all the better.
Where can you watch this thing right now?
Good question.
It's on Hulu.
He travels to Zurich.
Oops.
It might also be on Amazon Prime. Let's see.
I'm gonna have to watch this thing because I never watched it as a child, but I remember the previews coming on and just kind of being intrigued.
Huh.
When you're a 10-year-old kid, the adult world is an entire new planet.
It's mystery, like what?
You'll never inhabit that space in your imagination.
Hulu, yeah, you're right. I see Hulu.
Well, it sounds amazing. Somebody will have to tell me how it goes.
Yeah. It is available on Prime Video. You're right.
I'm gonna try to see this tomorrow. Oh, it's premium subscription on Hulu.
Do you have Apple TV?
Is it on Apple TV?
$3.99.
Good.
All right.
Is it worth $4? I don't know if it's worth.
I don't know.
I doubt it, but there's that closing the loop in your life, right?
Yeah.
10-year-old Keith is talking to 56-year-old Keith, saying, "See this fucking movie."
Guess what? Guess what's going on? Yeah.
It's like, if you see no other movie about Zurich and the Alps, you must see.
It's rated mid-60s on most things, but on Google Movies it is 84%. So
maybe this is our homework, guys.
I mean, it's about Clint Eastwood.
Are you assigning this homework, or are you suggesting homework?
I'm suggesting.
Is this an assignment or a suggestion?
How many minutes is it? Because I'm not talking hours. How many minutes is it? Is it 90 minutes? Is it 70 minutes? Is it 75
2 hours,
minutes?
3 minutes.
Woo!
Oh my
Son
God.
of a biscuit.
That's really
They
long.
wrote that much dialogue back then? I thought they just, shot each other.
Clint's got a grimace at you.
Okay, we're going to just sit here for a second and get really, really cold.
Oh, that's too good.
I have ruined.
Great.
Oh, it was a bestseller book.
Yeah, it's based on a book.
Yeah,
Okay.
see, that makes it better. Every movie based on a book
it doesn't necessarily. That might mean that the book is really good.
85%, 90% of the time, it means that it's a good movie because
60% of the time it was.
The
son of
the DVD on Amazon has 1,347 ratings, and it's 4.5 stars.
Oh,
son of a bitch.
that's for Vanana McGee right there.
Yeah, who is there?
Homework.
Anybody modern?
Homework.
Okay, it's homework. Son of a.
Fine,
Oh.
I've got a week. I've got
Before we
$3.99 to
game
kill.
next,
Whatever.
You must watch the Iger Station.
That'll be hilarious. Brenda Venus.
So happy consanguinity. That was a really interesting word. Somebody dropped it into chat. Consanguinity, basically meaning you both come from the same ancestor. In other words, you are related. And whether that's, from Adam or whether that's from, your uncle's nephew. That's
a great word.
I love that word. I'm gonna use that. That's my word of the week.
Consanguinity. You don't have to.
Try working that into a conversation.
Yeah. So it's not like there's consanguinity here, but I really like her.
If you want to see Google light up the minute you say a word.
That's right. I really like her. Rudy and his. Gosh, I can't believe I lost his last name. Rudy. Anyway, Rudolph. Rudy. Mayor of son of a bitch. Giuliani.
Oh,
Mayor Giuliani is familiar with consanguinity. That's all I have to say.
Do you mean like in a biblical sense familiar?
Well, consanguinity is, basically, yeah. But at a certain age, it doesn't matter because you're not going to have consanguinity children or children under the guise of. Never mind. Let's just say if you're related, stop sexting.
Sexting.
I thought you were talking about Rudy, like the football movie.
No, Rudy Giuliani. I don't know why, for whatever reason, I lost that name. But Rudy was,
He's forever tied to hair dye now.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, goodness. But no.
Okay, well, we got our homework assignments. Any last words?
Probably time to call it.
Guys, this was awesome. Thanks for this little sharing opportunity. And
ditto. Very fun.
We can record this. Some poor citizens of the earth will at some point watch this.
It's like, what are these guys?
Hey, someone made Mystery Science Theater 3000 also.
Yeah, but that was art. This is just 4 drunk guys talking.
Yeah. What
How do you think Mystery Science Theater
3000
started?
3 guys, 3 drunk guys talking. That's what it was.
We're just missing a scream of some shitty movie playing in the background.
Which is now going to be the
Iger section.
The Iger section. 2 hours and 3 minutes. Yes.
120.
I'm doing it.
3 minutes.
I'm doing my homework. I'm a straight A student. I got to.
All right, stop brown nosing teacher.
Yeah,
come on.
Actually,
love you guys.
Nobody hears the teacher right now. Where we're going, the person in charge is not here. Yeah. Yes, it has been wonderful. Thank you so much, and Keith, as always, lots of love. Ken, Mike.
Good night.
It's great to sit in this boat with you guys.
And sink? No, good night.
Yeah. Good night.
Yes.
Good night.